Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. With you as always, me, Ben. Today I'm joined by, didn't get his first name, damn it, but he is an influencer on Instagram, Era of Tech. I know him by his last name right now, Tech, and great to have you on, man.
What's up, Ben? Yeah, my first name is Carlos. Um, I'm glad. Thank you for having me on here. Very excited to have an open discussion or open dialogue about questions you might have.
Yeah, he said Carlos right before I started the clicker, so this is great. So let's start kind of at the beginning. Where are you from, and how was your childhood like, and then what kind of led you up to join the army?
Okay, so I was born and raised in Bayside, Queens, in New York City. Um, Traditional, very conservative Hispanic household. I am the firstborn of two legal immigrants to the United States from the country of Uruguay. Uh, my parents came here in like the early mid '80s. They had me in like the late '80s, and then yeah, like I said, really conservative Hispanic household where I was just like very structured based, very like manipulative on this like the Hispanic female side and stuff with like your mother like convincing you that you're not good enough, belittling things like of that nature, which is pretty relevant to a lot of Hispanic males that grow up.
That's got to be tough, like especially you're already in. I mean, I'm from the Midwest, so New York is New York to me, but I definitely know it probably wasn't easy growing up in Queens with like you're the firstborn legal immigrant, and then your family is like full on from Uruguay, and then you're dealing with that along with pressures at home. Was that a lot, or?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I went to a pretty diverse. I'm from Queens, so Queens is very diverse. So there's a lot of mixtures of cultures and everything. Like there, you can have any kind of food if you walk down the block long enough. You'll find great Italian pizza, a great Italian food, some pizza, great dumplings from Thailand. You go to Flushing, you go down to random like alleyways, you'll find amazing food down any alleyway you go to, especially in Flushing, Queens. But like growing up, like there was a lot of like unintentional pressure and anxiety that was given to from my parents, expecting a lot from me. Um, that I've learned as a father not to translate to my children or try not to translate to my children because like it was detrimental to my development as a young adult and then into the adulthood especially um, I, when I went from high school it was again a conservative household so I didn't really go anywhere unless I was going to and coming back from track practice and that was like soccer practice track practice those are my two biggest things in high school that allowed me to like leave the house without a like full out like operations order on what am I doing, the five W's of what am I doing every single time I would go out. And then that led to me being a rebellious young college student and then screwing up like a really nice hand I was dealt with comparative to my parents.
Yeah, I can relate. I think a lot of guys in the army have that where they were gonna, their home life may not have been the best. They get pressured and pressured to just do better than before, even though it's like so much pressure, it ultimately sets you up a little bit for failure or you just not truly believing in yourself at some point. And for firsthand experience too, you get to college and then it's like, oh, I'm free. Now I can't really focus because there's so much damn freedom. I don't even know what to do
Oh
at this
yeah,
point.
absolutely. I like to relate it to like the military and then your freshman year in college. One sec. Brooklyn, can you leave? Thank you. My daughter's just trying to sneak in behind me. So
No, you're
yeah,
good.
like
You're good.
I like to correlate freshman year of college and like your entry into the military as the same exact thing. because you go from a very structured environment or an environment that you are well adapted to, and then especially if you're like going living on campus and everything in college, and you're going away from campus, you are now you go from mom and dad doing everything for you or the majority of things for you to you have to take care of yourself, and that is a huge culture shock whether you go to college or whether you join the army or the military in general, which I see when I was at drill sergeant. I saw the same thing uh, with those coming in, and those the same like issues that I like saw when I got in college. Like there's that whole saying like your freshman 15, like the amount of weight that you gain like your freshman year and stuff. It's the same on the military
Yeah.
side from like an
Yeah.
outside perspective. Like you are not gonna have a home cooked meal all the time, and then like everyone knows, that DFAC food is not always the best thing, and you have your own choices. So like yeah, the military in general has like green, yellow, and red food groups like to go around to.
Yeah.
But you're gonna
It's
gain
like
weight.
pizza's green though, so it's like, and then you get confused on that, and then um, my first duty station up at JBLM, the Arby's and Popeyes was closer than the DFAC to our barracks. So then, like, people are just making rash decisions off that, like, because you're young, you don't know what you're doing.
You
It's
have money. You have money for the first time. You have options. Like, if you have a vehicle, like you are seen, like especially as a brand new private, like you're the go-to dude to do all the stuff because you have the availability to leave the post and everything. But yeah, like I can see the same correlation. Like, and that's like where I draw the togetherness of like being in the military and then going to college, and they're exact parallels to each other instead of just like one being colliding with the other. They're parallels to each other because the culture shock alone, um, from the army to from college to the army was completely 180 degrees. Like I never got like that whole environment where it's like Queens is very diverse with minorities, but Caucasians, like it's not really a big thing in New York City. Like they're the actual minorities. So like interacting with them in college, I had some awareness, but it's like stereotypical Long Island New Yorkers and like Caucasians that are from like stereotypical like
yeah.
Nassau and Suffolk County with like thick accents. You think of Jersey Shore, like it's in that same time frame. Then you go to Georgia and for basic training, and then majority of my duty stations are below the Mason-Dixon line, and like it's a completely different environment and different culture that is a lot slower. It takes a lot more to adapt to than the fast pace of growing up in the city of New York.
Yeah, I'm like the opposite, where I came from rural Missouri, and then I went to Leonardwood for basic, which I was like, oh, it's cool, and then I went to JBLM, and that's a whole thing in of itself in Washington. But I was meeting everyone that I was meeting Hispanic people, Black people, Asian people, and like I never really interacted with them too much up until the army. So it's kind of on both sides. You get that culture shock, and you're like, "Holy shit, this is a different world." But it's good. It's a good culture shock.
No, absolutely, and it all like again correlating to college and then like the army and the military as a whole. Like it is what you do, you take with it because you could either stay on post, like you could have just stayed on JBLM and not explored Washington State and all the beauties it had, and you're just missing out on all these things, and then you'll have a very negative outlook about your military experience. The same with college. Like you can move away from home and just stay in your stay in your dorm room, isolate yourself in there, and just be like not explore the environment that you are now you have to adapt to. But I like
What No, you're good. Continue. I'm
no,
sorry.
I like going to a different duty station and exploring. Like I've been to Fort Bragg, Fort Carson twice, and then Schofield Barracks, Jackson. I didn't really get to explore in Jackson because there was just no time being a drill sergeant. You have
Yeah,
no,
there's yeah.
there's no absolutely no time. Like the amount of respect that I have for those dudes and gals that are on the trail right now, like they have no very limited social time and outside of like their 9 to 9 or no 5 to 9 like you're there all the damn time. Like I didn't get really to explore Jackson. My family did. I didn't. But now here being in Florida, like I'm it's a different environment. It's still pretty high tempo, pretty long hours, but I'm making the maximum amount of effort for my time being here.
That's the same. I did. We're kind of jumping ahead, but the my last 3 years up to last June, I was on the trail, and that first 2.5 years, I mean, like when I got time, I could go. I would do stuff with my family, support them. But like you said, you're gone. I was gone from 3 in the morning to 8 or 9 at night if I was lucky, and then that's Monday through Friday, and then Saturday. While it may not be the whole day, you're still taking up most of the day, and then you're still exhausted. So, I actually started this podcast like I think about 2 years in, and I barely put out stuff just because you don't have freaking time.
Yeah.
And now, like you said here, I don't even, I have time. Like it's way less busy, don't get me wrong, but you're still kind of like working. So you got to figure that routine out a little better. But
Oh, and
it's
then you're
definitely
yeah,
a step
absolutely. And then
down.
like you still have to like recover from that. Like being on the trail, you don't recover from that stuff. Like I would say like 2 to 4 years after. Like I still can't get into a good sleep habit. I still have a lot of like tendencies from that environment that was just very detrimental to my physical and mental well being. That a lot of people do not know and can't really relate because like now in my like in the job I have now like as a ranger instructor here in Florida like I could see and be grateful for the time off that I have, the accessibility to my leadership, um, the hands-off approach because the majority of us are all senior leaders that the environment it's completely different from the trail where it's like yeah I'm a senior leader but I am still micromanaged for every little thing that you do like you don't do and then if you hold others accountable for like that stuff like you're just looked as like someone who is out to get them in reality you're just protecting them and yourself because everything on the, especially on that side of the trade-off field, it's against the drills and it's not in benefit of those senior leaders or anything like that. It's in the benefit of like the trainees and all that.
Well, and I mean, in that whole environment, it's always preached to of like we have your back, we're gonna do what's support you, and then the second there's any pointing of the fingers by the trainees or whatever, your ass is on the line, not theirs. It's guilty until proven innocent, and I can't stand that culture right now in Tradoc. It's I know Leonard Wood was pretty bad about it. It gets me really heated. I had some bad moments throughout Tradoc. I yeah. I'll jump back. I don't want to get all salty.
Okay.
You were in college and um what what made you switch over to Army and what did you sign up for and everything?
Okay. So for me in college, like being from New York City, in the middle of like 9/11 time frame, I was trying to enlist from high school because the majority of my buddies in they were they were in the JRTC, so the high school ROTC programs. So a lot of them went to either a lot of military institutions like West Point. Like we had 4 dudes go to West Point. Um, we had multiple dudes just sign up for the military right out of high school, and I was trying to do the same thing. But my dad's like, "Hey, like you have a golden opportunity. You got some scholarships available to you. Go to college and see where that takes you." And then fast forward to like 4.5 years of staying in college, I screwed it all up. I like didn't prioritize the right things and I don't want to like keep blaming like my environment of growing up, but it had a huge factor to do. It was like being like so like confined to everything being a conservative household like that. Like when I was finally allowed to do this stuff for myself, I went wild. I would start drinking a lot. I like yeah, drinking. I did like a lot of like weed because it's college. Um, so all those bad behaviors didn't really correlate to like me being really successful in school and then on the field as a track and field athlete that I got scholarships for. So I lost my scholarship, and then I had to fight another year of just cutting all that stuff out for like almost 2 years to dig myself out of like the terrible GPA that I gave myself and like the immense debt that I put myself under because like it was I lost my scholarship, but I still wanted to go to school and everything. And yeah, like when it came to my last year, and it's just sobered up for I would say for a whole year, almost like 18 months. I was just straight edge, like go to bed 9 p.m. Continue be consistent with my classwork, be consistent with my runs, and everything was going great. But the hole that I dug myself in early in my career, in my college career, was just too immense to get out. So as much as I tried and everything, like I got back to like a 2.9 GPA from a point 0.9. So it was just not enough to continue pursuing college. So then myself and my buddy Thomas, we were both relatively in the same boat. Like we just partied too hard, didn't prioritize the right things, they weren't adults. So we're like, hey, like he's like looking into the army, and he brought me along with him because he had like the buddy program, like the recruiting buddy program,
Oh yeah.
in the early 2000 in 2009. So we signed up for that, and then he had bigger plans than I did because I was just like, they're gonna pay off my debt. I'm gonna have a job where I'm gonna have a steady income, insurance. Like, all right, I really don't care about what the contract says. Um, that goes to my like being so naive and everything. So I was offered all this stuff. I was like, hell yeah, I'll take it. And then Thomas was offered a lot more, and it was a more. He did more research and more things aligned to what he wanted. He wanted to go to the 18 X-ray contract. I didn't care about that. I just wanted. I saw a blue cord by one of the like the recruiters in there, like on his dress uniform. I liked the blue cord. I was just like, that's dope. I want to get that. And then he's like, okay, so just join infantry like with Thomas. And I was like, okay, yeah. So Thomas is doing that. And right when we were supposed to ship out, he ships out like a week or two before I did. And he just tells me while he's at MEPS, he's like, hey, dude, we're not going to go together. And I was just like, hey, man, like we did this all together. Like I thought we'd see it through to the end. And he's like, hey, man, something came down and like they offered me this contract for 18 X-ray. And I was like, okay, well, it's your life. Like yeah, it would be great to go to basic with someone you know, but it's his life. And then 2 weeks later, I get shipped out to Fort Benning, uh, to 150 in Bico, and the rest is just like history. Like I've gotten duped by the military so many times, just like because it's like it's so comfortable. The longer you stay in, the easier it gets for you. Like physically, it gets so much easier the longer you stay in. Mentally, it's more draining and everything because you have more roles, more responsibilities. But physically, I'm not getting smoked anymore as I was as a private, or I'm going getting belittled because of no, you're still getting belittled because like you think you know
Oh yeah.
everything. You're like
It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop whether you make 7 or 8 or 9. Like it's still there's still shit rolling downhill.
yeah, and it's crazy because you'd think like, okay, I am an established senior non-commissioned officer. I should assume that I'd have some level of like respect or like they would I would have some kind of knowledge, but like nowadays it's just like it's that's not the case because you're like you're getting berated by like dudes who have never even made it past their first contract, and they're just like, well, I know this guy who also knows this who's third person knows that this dude made it to this rank at this like rarity time, like 6 7 years. He made it to E7.
Yeah.
Like, all right, man, that's not you. That's him, and that could be right. That could be true. Like, or it just could be a lie that your friend told you, and you're not. You're just taking his word for facts and like all that. Like, it is a. It's just such a different environment than where I got in, and I looked up to those like senior non-commissioned officers. Like, hey, these guys are subject matter experts of like all they're doing because yeah, it's the middle of the invasion, like invasion time frame, like 2009, and what they're saying is bond because you're going into the conflict. You know, eventually you're gonna go into like to deploy. So you're taking everything they're saying like, okay, this is factual. And then nowadays it's not the same way. Like it's just like this guy doesn't even know what LISCO stands for, or this random acronym or this random acronym that we just came up with 3 days ago. You don't know what a AUP, AXP, uh, CCP, like, dude, yeah, acronyms are great in the military, but they only work if we're all on the same page. Like, I saw a video yesterday. It was just like three of the four branches, or like four of the five branches, use MOS, and then you have the Air Force that uses AFES. It's like
Yeah.
there's no continuity throughout everything to like understand. Like, hey, this is all we're all on the same page. We're not. It's not gonna happen.
Also, we're like all in the army. Marines have a little more tendency to. We're all similar. The army, everybody has different jobs, so everybody has different focal points that they have where they're like, okay, I know this, this, and that. But the army, at a certain point, really, once you hit like staff sergeant above, they want you to know every aspect of the army. Where you're like, I can try, but I'm not gonna know all this shit. And then people get looked down upon because they don't know certain aspects. And you're like, as long as you're trying to learn it a little bit, at least, I don't think people should get shunned for not knowing certain fucking things when everyone is trying to do it. I think there's like 100 something, 160 different MOSs. Like that's a lot of different aspects of this military.
Yeah, and there's a lot of MOSs that just get disbanded that no longer exist, and then they have to shift and change their priorities, and then the evolution of like war fighting just changes every time there's another conflict. Like, yeah, the GWAT was certain tactics and certain doctrine was great for that, but then you have in a LISCO environment now, like drone warfare and stuff like that's there's no we don't have firsthand experience unless it's dudes that signed up, went to Ukraine, came back, and did all that stuff, or they're contractors for that stuff. Like it's changing constantly, and yeah, you're like you're right. Like if you're in the wrong environment, you're like you don't know this. How do you not know this? Where have you been? I don't know. I've been doing other things. Like, how do you not know how to open an Excel worksheet? How about that? Like, how do you not know how to use an Excel worksheet and fill in uh the admin stuff. Like we're the same rank. You don't understand. How do you not know? Well, I was just staying on the line. I was like, you need to be well rounded, and like you said, like as long as you're trying, you can work with that. It's those dudes that are just so hard headed. Like, I don't need that. I don't.
I'm not gonna do this shit. I don't. I'm
I'm too
not.
old to
I didn't.
learn.
Yep.
Yeah,
I can't stand it.
it's always echoed throughout the whole military as a whole. Like you have those outliers where there's dudes that are not humble enough to be like, hey man, I don't know this. And me, I am humble. I know that like I got rocked enough times in the head to know that I everything up here is not like together the right way, and it's wired completely different. And I'm gonna ask for help. And do I get looked down upon for it? Yeah, absolutely, all the time. Like for me, like after my second deployment, and then like transitioning from like learning how to sleep again, talk again, like going through all that the process and stuff, like from like the TBI that I got, it still affects me 11 years later. Like an example is like the other day I had to, or last class I had to, we brief in the mornings, and I was briefing our plan. I wrote it down, I rehearsed it, I did all the things that I learned from my like rehab and therapy on what to do to articulate what I wanted to say. But nerves got the best of me, and like I knew exactly what I wanted to say. My mind is going 100 miles an hour, but my lips and everything are not at the same level because there's just that disconnect from the neurons getting trauma and stuff to it. And like it got brought to my attention, like, hey, you kind of stuttered, blah blah blah. I was like, I didn't think I stuttered. I have everything written down. Like I know exactly what I'm doing. Like it's not an issue whether or not I can articulate. If I know what I'm doing, it's just I can't articulate it well because the mind and my mouth is not connected enough. You know what I'm saying? And then like through therapy.
Yeah, I think let's yeah, it's really even me. I don't have any trauma or anything, but I just have
Oh
like
no, you
when
do.
my
You do. Like it's the brain and everything. Like from what I've learned, like the brain and trauma, like the body and the mind doesn't be like, oh, this is just military trauma. This is only military TBI. This is only trauma to the brain is all combined to the same thing. So you could have trauma from growing up. Like I have tons of trauma from like the narcissistic tendencies like my mother had towards me or towards my sisters. That we're still she's thankfully she's going to therapy now, but she's understanding like these are traumas that you like impose on it, and the brain doesn't know the difference between trauma. It's all it's all in the same category for the brain.
yeah, I never really looked at it like that too much. I guess I never really looked into my trauma like anything like that too much. I've been to BH and stuff, but I have trouble going. That's a whole other thing. But I do know that feeling of your mind going 100 miles an hour and you almost displace yourself when you're talking, especially as a drill or instructing in general or teaching a class. You kind of it almost like you're floating away from yourself and you see yourself talking and you know what you want to say, but your mind's not keeping up or your mind's just somewhere fucking else and you're trying so hard to focus on it, but sometimes it just doesn't turn out right. And that I think a lot of people that happens to a lot more than not. Yeah, I never thought about the trauma thing though, where it's all just one bunch. It's not like PTSD or like TBI from a battlefield, right? The same like kid that got assaulted or hurt emotionally and shit every day as a kid. That's all in the same area. That's all like affecting the same way. So that's a good way to look at it. I didn't.
No,
I mean, not a
yeah,
good
and
way,
a lot
but
of people, be, well, especially on like social media, of the most is where it's comparative. It's like, well, I dealt with this, you dealt with that. Like I grew up in this kind of environment and everything. I had it harder. Did you? Because your brain can process the trauma completely differently. Like, yeah, uh, I had a great childhood growing up. Like I can't complain. I can't be like, oh, I'm from Queens. I had a there was a lot of yeah, there was gangs, but like they were nice. Like the gangs are there. Like they were nice to us because we were. I was friends with like two gang members, younger brother, and like we were best of friends, and like they watched out for us, and it wasn't like, oh, you grew up in an environment and like you got beat up, and that's like that made you hard and stuff. Like, yeah, that did, but like the trauma that from the military that gives you, it's like it's all in the same. It's all in the same thing. Like we just get to a point where it's just so comparative. It's like, oh well, it's this, but it's not this. So it's like a pissing contest, especially when you're like when you're talking to other people about, hey, this is what I'm going through, and you're just transparent and open about it. And they're like, well, suck it up. Like, all right, man, I'm not gonna open up to you anymore. And like, and I can assume like that's something when you like experience, especially on the behavioral health side, like that's like one of like the biggest sides on the military where it's just everyone's just so afraid to go to behavioral health because they're afraid that it's gonna affect their career. They're gonna be looked down upon. Um, but for me, like I got told, hey man, go. And like the way I look at it as behavioral health, like if you have issues with losing weight, trying to get in shape, um, you go to a trainer, right? You go to a physical trainer. They write you a diet plan. They give you a workout routine and stuff. What's the difference between your brain and your physical body? Like you're going to a professional to write out to give you a plan on how to give you tools to adapt firsthand experience to cope, or some people call it masking. But you're learning the tool. You're getting tools from an expert to work this muscle that is your brain that controls the rest of your body.
Yeah, I've always heard it put like if you broke your arm, right? They put you in a. They don't just like tell you to figure it out. They put you in a cast. There's rehab. And it's not just a 1 day fix. You got to go for a while to get that sorted out, and it may never be the same, but it'll get a lot better. So I understand that. um, let's jump back a little bit because you kind of mentioned a lot of stuff. I just want to get in what you've done. You start out, you become 11 Bravo or Charlie?
I'm 11 Bravo. I was 11
Okay.
Bravo by 2 weeks. So like the class
Okay.
beforehand, the one that Thomas went into was at that time they were just divided them by 11 Charlies was just one company because that's how all the Charlies were in Alpha and then Echo 150. So the beginning and the end of like the cycle. So I was 2 weeks off from getting a Charlie assignment, but I was at 11 Bravo at Fort Benning. And then because I had the track and field background, had nothing in my contract, nothing special,
Yeah, yeah.
no 40,
No.
40 option 40, nothing like that. I just they said, hey, here's $5,000 bonus. We have the student loan repayment program, um, and you ship out in 6 months because I was on the um, delayed entry program.
Delayed entry.
Yeah, delayed
Yeah.
entry program. So I was like, okay, sweet. I get to go in the summertime after college. Um, but it was all a lie. Like it was all just like the recruiter just lied to me. Like the student loan repayment program doesn't really cover privatized loans. It only
Oh,
covers it
fudge.
covers like
Yeah.
the public loans and stuff. And then the $5,000 bonus at NEPS, the guy was like, well, you can only have one or the other. You can't have the student loan repayment program and then the bonus. So I go with like, well, that one's offering it's like 80K or 70K. So like, I'd rather take that than just the 5K. I'll deal with it. Then I get to I get through basic training. I get an airborne contract because a lot of dudes that had airborne contracts were just not physically what the airborne community was looking for at the time. I was a
Yeah.
solid runner out of college, so they're like, hey, you and I think it was like 6 other dudes. We all went to airborne school right out of basic training. Some dudes went uh, did their 14 option 40 contracts. We didn't have any. I think we had one dude who was 18 X-ray, but he got dropped and he went to Italy instead. He's like they offered him Italy instead of. I was like, that sounds like a
Yeah.
pretty sweet deal because he was prior service and everything. I get through airborne school. It was a pretty easy 3 weeks comparative to like any other military school that I've gone to. It's just not a like a huge amount of schools, but comparative to the other schools that I've gone to, airborne was physically the most easiest one to do, but like the most scary to do in general because learning that like at the end of it, like it's one of the highest schools of injury rates in all of trade off. It's the highest uh, rate of catastrophic failures, and that's when they went from the T10 to T11 parachutes and stuff because of like catastrophic failures, and then the injuries that people sustain from parachuting. So I get to my first
They
unit.
they push it so
Yeah,
sorry, I
yeah,
was
yeah.
they they push it so hard when you're there of like it's probably not going to happen, but here's what can happen. And then they show you like a toe jumper or, pulling your reserve when you need to. And so, I mean, there's just, it terrifies you. And then I didn't sleep the night before the first one. You're like, I'm going to fucking die tomorrow, which is such a ridiculous thought process. But then you get up there, you do it, you figure it out, and you're like, I'm still terrified, but like, I at least know 90% of the time this turns out fine.
Yeah, but like you have 6 seconds to pull that reserve. But I grew when I got in, it was just like you're writing it in, like you're not pulling that reserve unless you have complete catastrophic failure on your parachute. And I still don't. I still have never pulled my reserve. Still never like I've got over like 20, almost 30 jumps. Never pulled my reserve. Still fearful of pulling my reserve. Like I only spent well now it's probably 4 years now in the airborne community with like my current duty station and then the 82nd. Um, but when I got there to the 82nd, it was just a really eye-opening experience because it was just the unit I was in no longer exist. Well, the brigade I was in no longer exists. It got disbanded and got absorbed throughout the rest of the other three brigades. So I was in
Yeah.
Fourth Brigade, 2508. I was on that. I missed out on that first deployment, the 2010 one, by a few weeks. They had a cutoff, and I missed it. So when everyone came back, like I was already at the unit for probably 4 to 5, almost 6 months, and the animosity that everyone had towards me instinctively because I'm the new guy,
Yeah.
it was just I didn't like it. I honestly did not like the toxicity that I saw there. Um, so I went on the deployment, came back. It didn't get any better. I I mean, I could do some personal reflection. Maybe I was the issue in some of the points, but I don't believe I was. I never had any corrective actions like where it was just like the police was involved, MPs were involved, alcohol was involved. I was never related into those things. The hardest thing or the worst thing I did was get married while while being the 82nd right before deployment. And that was a nightmare with my chain of command because like my chain of command didn't care about me at the individual level, and that counseling showed it to me because I came in with the student loan, all the student loan debt, and I asked around for a year and a half. No one knew what to do. No one, no one knew what to do on where I got to submit the paperwork. None of that stuff. The internet was there, but it wasn't. It still had
It was nowhere near what you could do
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
You had AIM. That was like that was your big thing. You didn't really
Oh
have.
yeah.
Um, so I got married. My counseling reflected that like I I'm going to inherit my wife's debt and all this stuff, and like that's my responsibility too. And all, and I was like, sir, you have no.
They counseled you on
They
that?
counseled me on getting married, and one of the talking points was, you get married to this individual, whatever debt that they have, you are acquiring it as well. And then that went to go show me like they didn't know anything about me outside of like, hey, Tech can just run really fast. That's it. Because I got in on this student loan repayment because I had a huge amount of debt from going to college and not having a degree like out of it. So that was part of like I was like, hey, sir, like you really don't care about me, do you? Like she's been helping me get out of debt right now. I'm the one with all the issues. Like I'm the one with the amount of debt. No one here has helped me with like how do I process this paperwork that I got from basic training a year ago, and I still have it like in the Manila folder and everything. And like, oh, you just gotta figure it out. All right, so like, cool. I get back from that deployment a lot. It was very kinetic. It was the 2012 deployment with the 82nd. So we're in Zari, Afghanistan, and RC East or RC South, RC South, in like past the Kandahar area, really close to really far west. And come back from that deployment, nothing's really changed. The biggest highlight of change I had was the Brigade XO was Major Mayo. Uh, he brought CrossFit to like the 87 or Fourth Brigade over there, and the environment started changing to a positive. And
Yeah.
then fast forward, like he later because of my battalion commander in Hawaii when I get stationed there, and one of the best battalion commanders, like one of the most relatable battalion commanders that I've ever got the opportunity to work with. Like Colonel Mayo, oh now he's a colonel, but Colonel Mayo is just one of those leaders that like just left such a great impact early on in my career. Like I know when I went to Hawaii on my fourth duty station, he saw the 82nd patch, asked me where I was. He's like, I was like, oh, I was in 2508. He's like, come to my office. He sat me down, gave me he's like, did you get a deployment coin? And I was like, no, sir, I never got a deployment coin. He's like, here's an extra one from that deployment. So he's like, he was the
Dang.
brigade XO, and he gave me one of his extra deployment coins. And I was just like, oh, this is, I'm just so happy for this to happen.
It's little things like that that pumps you up, man. That brings relief a little bit and hope. That's awesome that he did that.
Yeah, absolutely. So then after that first deployment I had, my reenlistment window opened up because I was already there for like over two and a half years. Um, I reenlisted to get out of there, to leave early. Um, and that was a nightmare in itself because no one leaves this vacuum that is called the 82nd. Oh, at the time, I don't know if things have changed now, but in my personal experience and in my isolated battalion and company and platoon, no one knew what to do. So I re-enlisted for Fort Carson. I was just like, hell yeah! Like they're on the deployment tracker. They're gonna go in on. They're just coming back. They were coming back the same time that we were coming back. Just they're offset by 6 months, and they're in
Yeah.
The Korengal Valley. So they're gonna do the whole train up and then deploy again. So I re-enlisted. Uh, no one knew what to do, so I had to figure it out how to PCS from Fort Bragg. And then when I was doing all that, I was getting my old team leaders and the dudes that were in charge of me hitting me up. Hey man, I'm PCSing. What do I do? Hey Sergeant, this is what you need to do. Like,
Yeah.
because no one ever left. Um, then I went to Fort Carson to another brigade that doesn't exist anymore, Fourth Brigade that got disbanded, 112. Uh, and that environment was a complete different environment. Like
Hmm.
I enjoyed the brotherhood that I got on that in that unit. It was still light, so it didn't convert to striker.
It wasn't mechanized or
No, it
anything. It
wasn't
was just
mechanized. It
light.
was because they had
Nice.
four brigades. One was Third Brigade was Bradley's. First Brigade was First and Second Brigade were still strikers, and then Fourth Brigade was still light.
Okay.
So the light infantry they got disbanded, right? Because they had the least amount of things that they needed to move around. But
Yeah.
the brotherhood and the camaraderie that I felt in that duty station was second to none. Like it in my first duty station, it just felt like there's a lot of dudes that are just looking out to get you and like put you down so they look better, which was a very common occurrence in the environment that I was in. And then to move to a different unit and to see the complete opposite, it was just it was awesome. Like so much so that I went back again to Carson because I loved that environment and like that is where I felt home. So I get on that 2000. We train up 2013. I PCS 2012, 2012 to 13. It's all train up, and then as the new year comes around, I get onto the 2014 deployment, and I'm on the torch element. So I'm in one of the first elements to go out there, and then the
Yeah.
responsibility is completely different from like my first deployment where it was just like pushing white space and all this stuff. We were the aerial reaction force for RC South, so
Cool.
we were going in there, left seat, right seating with 10th Mount, I think, that were like we were going to be the security for the escorts for UH-60s onto different parts of all the RC South, RC South. Yeah.
South, right? Because you said you were in the Korengal still
No, that
during the second one, or no?
no that the
That was one
unit I
before.
came in, they were in the Korengal, so I was like, okay, we
Oh,
came
okay.
from that, and then we were going to Kandahar, so half of us went to half the battalion, well, the majority of the battalion went to Kandahar and pushed out from Kandahar to like Camp Hero, Camp David, all that stuff. And then my platoon was we were allocated to Fob Apache in RC South. So that deployment completely different. Like a lot more working out, a lot more chill, pretty consistent. Kinetic at sometimes, but not as a directly, but indirectly. Like because we were escorting the medical birds and stuff.
Yeah.
We got to see a lot more of the medical side, like the bad stuff on the medical side, firsthand. Like we were outside of a town that was owned by Alexander the Great. There was like a VBID that went off in the streets. Kids were in the streets, got injured and killed and everything. They were bringing kids in. But overall, like with that deployment, like in the middle of it, we had the UH-60 I was in. Like we got shot and it crashed. And then from there, I went back to CAF because of my injuries, and I stayed in Kandahar for another month with myself and my 240 gunner Chris, and we're still the only two dudes from the 14 dudes that were in that. Well, out of the, if you're not counting the pilots are still in. Two of us out of the 10 are still in the military. So the other 10 were just so jacked up
Damn.
that they had to get medically retired from my PL squad leader. I lost basically my whole entire squad in this one incident, with the exception of like my 240 gunner who was attached to us. So we stayed in Afghanistan for another month, and then we got redrafted with new orders at CAF to do a different mission. And at that time, they put me as I was an E5. I had no squad, so they put me as an E6 position as a squad leader. And I looked at Bramlett. I looked at my brand new squad. I tried it for 2.5 weeks, um, but I felt disattached from those dudes at no fault of their own.
Yeah,
Um,
it had to be very hard to go from that traumatic experience and all your guys dealing with that to jump in with this new group, partway through the deployment,
yeah,
just taking over.
absolutely,
I
and
can't
that's
imagine.
yeah. And I talked to that to like my platoon sergeant, new PL. Then it got brought up to where the chaplain got involved. The chaplain was a really good help for us. Um, and then it got to the battalion commander and yeah, Lieutenant Colonel Voorhees, and then Sergeant Major. Yeah, Sergeant Major got involved, and then they were like, "Hey," a month later, like a lot of dumb stuff happened in that 1 month at CAF. Like the day after I got off the crash, we still we were in the hospital. We got released from the roll 3 like 48 hours afterwards, just so that we didn't have any like concussion issues and everything. So we got released 2 days after to go back to the unit, and we were on like a light duty profile for 10 days. Then mind you, we had no weapons. Me and Chris had no weapons. It was me, Chris, and Ryan. Ryan left within 4 days because he turned for the worse. Like his kidneys reshut down. He actually found out that he actually did have a broken leg, and like they missed it in the X-ray, so they sent him to Germany to get surgery and stuff. So it's just me and Chris for like a week, 10 days, 10 days, when walking around CAF, no weapon system. One of the first uh, days there, I'm walking into DFAC, and this first sergeant for my unit
Lit you up. I'm
just
sure that you
lit me up,
fucking
like lit me up.
in the middle of calf with no weapon. You're like, what the fuck are you
I'm in
doing?
the DFAC by the barracks, like the hard stand buildings, and he's like, "Hey, Sergeant, where the fuck is your weapon? Did you fucking lose it?" And I'm limping. I'm limping. My arm is still like really jacked up. So I'm grabbing my like right hand to move my left hand, move it back, and then I could see his face I could see his face go from like knife hand to like, oh shit, this is what we got briefed the other day about we of our own dudes. And I was like, hey, sorry, first sorry, I'm really sorry. I don't have an M4 right now. It broke on my arm during that crash that we had like 3 days ago. And he's like, holy shit, dude, I am so sorry. He's like, talk to your first sergeant, talk to your commander, tell them to give you a 9 mil that they're not using. So at least you don't get hemmed up by some random dude that doesn't have any idea of what you went through. And I was like, yeah, Roger, first sergeant. So fast forward, me and Chris we weren't dealing well with them giving us brand new dudes, and we explained it to him like, hey, look, I just can't do it. Like mentally, I can't connect myself to these dudes and give them the appropriate level of leadership that they need because I need to step back and I'm broken. I need time to fix. And Chris is not doing so well as well. I think it'd be best for us to both leave. So they put us on an admin flight from Afghanistan. We had our own small 10, 15 people uh, homecoming, which really didn't have a homecoming compared to the other dudes, which was I felt like I got taken away from me. But it was much needed. Went to and enrolled in the WTB at Carson for like a couple, all the way till they got back. So the majority of the summer, they got back in September.
The
So
WTB, sorry, real quick. I haven't experienced that. That's like the transition unit,
yeah,
right?
it was
That
a
helps you
warrior
until you.
transition
Yeah.
battalion where it's like you're on someone's books, but like you're recovering from injury and stuff. So like you're not being tasked out with like dumb stuff like gate guard or like other stuff. Like we had
Yeah, all the extra details that they're shit
yeah,
anyway,
you
and
shouldn't be on a
yeah.
red cycle tasking, but because you have the on the books, like you have all these dudes not doing anything, make them do something. And you're like, well, these dudes got blown up on Mother's Day. These dudes were in a fucking helicopter crash. They can't pull any of this stuff. They can't even wear helmets. So our senior medic, got us enrolled in that, and then that's where I learned all the therapy skills that I need that helped me, and I still use like how to go back to sleep, how to transition, like how to deal with like the trauma that I went to, how to express myself, how to vocalize myself a lot better than I used to. So fast forward, get out of WTV. I get back. The unit gets back. Everything is pretty good. There's like a lot of discrepancies with like the awards process that I hate. And I'm pretty sure you probably experienced, especially on the trail, where it's like it nowhere in regulations says states like this rank will get this award. But that's how it became. Like, uh,
But then the brigades push out, or division, they push out some bullshit of like a bronze star will only go to a lieutenant or higher. Like
a lieutenant in the
where the
talk, like a
yeah,
lieutenant in
what
the
as
talk.
opposed to a specialist pipe hitter that's like doing shit. He Arcom,
Yeah,
best I can do.
yeah.
Maybe.
An E4 corporal doing in an E6 position because there's no more E5s or E6 like RCOM or no AM, and it's like, well, it's because he's a corporal. Well, then write the bullets for an RCOM. And then my favorite, like the thing I hate the most is like the dudes that are always complaining about the 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 award system being broken are the ones that are writing these broken awards for their own buddies. Like, okay, you're just gonna look over this fact and not deal with it. Okay, cool. It only pertains to you. It doesn't pertain to everyone else. Like, but yeah, a lot of the awards that we should have gotten received because the initial investigation said was aimed in one direction, which was led by the investigated group to lead in one direction because there were certain political ties to a one star approving that mission that shouldn't have been
Yeah.
approved because it's like middle of the night, third time we've gone to that same area. We had intel, the SOPs and the TTPs that are developed where it's like if if our counterparts have this type of injury, they can be casevac on ground. why would you call up an aerial asset for someone who just got shot in the leg, who's stable? You can drive him to the local roll one, roll two, and you can make it there. But they called in the bird for a gunshot wound to the leg from one of our ANA counter uh, units down there.
The local
Yeah,
forces, yeah.
local forces, and it was through and through. So, yeah, we got hemmed up on that. We got shot at, mortared, all that stuff, and then all the awards that were initially put out from like I don't really want to talk about like the the heroic things that were happened that night because a lot of times it just circles back to me doing my job, and I don't see me doing my job as this like heroic thing. I was just fortunate to be there at the time of an unfortunate event, and because of the training prior to it, myself and the dudes that were there had the best outcome possible for a situation that was catastrophic. That shouldn't have been. We shouldn't have had that many people survive. But it was best case scenario for the worst case situation. So my platoon sergeant, PL, they're writing these awards. They're telling us about like, hey, like this, what you did was um, valorous level stuff. Like throwing myself on top of my squad leader as we were getting hit by mortars, pulling my squad leader out of a burning helicopter, making sure setting up a CCP, uh, with all my injuries, still being able to bring guys to the first birds, transfer them, and transfer myself and the rest of our dudes from the roll one to the roll two, all the way down to roll three, the whole time just being in the fight the whole time. I really didn't care about what they were putting me in for, but I know this a lot of the dudes that we were there with, it was their first deployment. I already had my CIB for my first deployment from the 82nd. It was very kinetic for a good chunk of the time. So that really didn't affect me, but it did affect a lot of dudes that were the younger cats, and they didn't get recognized for all the stuff that they went through because of, to be frank, it was the politics of the situation of us not supposed to be there. The initial investigation was it diverted all the blame to the pilots, um, and like the lack of hours and all that stuff that they didn't have on hand, and like the crew chief guys really didn't work with the pilot guys because they didn't have that time to develop working together because the crew chief came from Iraq, went back, got put on this Afghanistan deployment. They got integrated with these the Big Red One guy pilots, so they didn't really have time to like work together. So I didn't care because like at the time it didn't bother me. Like, okay, but the whole rumor mill was like, hey, they're putting you in for this prestigious award, and I was like, I don't care about myself. I care about all the other dudes. Like, as long as those dudes get what they deserve, because I know that I know in the hospital at CAF, I talked to my battalion commander. They had at at CAF they had like the Purple Heart in the hallway, so we had to walk up and down to make sure that nothing was broken. Like we kept seeing the Purple Heart, and then all the requirements like A through J, whatever requirements
Yeah,
to
yeah.
hit it, and then like one of them, like the I think it was like G point G or something. It wasn't. That's the one that we were like iffy about. Like, okay, everything else makes sense, but the G one directly impacted by the enemy. That's the one that it's gray for
Right.
us.
Because it's a V bid, sometimes they are sketchy about it, right?
No, it was it was it's not really a, yeah, well, vehicle, yeah, as an air, like a helicopter and stuff, yeah. We did have
Yeah.
a helicopter IED prior to that one on a different unit
Yeah.
where like the helicopter where the UH-60 landed on top of an IED and then they blew up. But
Okay.
ours was the for what happened to us was like, well, the initial investigation said it was pilot error or human error, and it wasn't because
Yeah.
of the fire that you took
Oh,
that initiated all that. And then, and how did we know that you got injured from the indirect fire afterwards, like TBI wise and everything? And TBI wasn't one of the things that was covered by the justification for a Purple Heart until 2019. And
right.
then
This is such semantics. I can't believe it's coming down to this. When you look at the full mission, even from the shit you're telling me, how can they be so fucking political about it, you know?
and the worst part is that we had a dude die. We had a dude die in this crash, and they gave him a Bronze Star. That's it, a Bronze Star. That and like in the final investigation, 2.5 years later, that I finally got to read and stuff. It's like, well, all that stuff that we saw, the direct fire from small arms, the indirect fire that we took, there was all categorized and all logged in on the flight logs from all the talks. But because Jake, the kid who died, Jake Wickstrom, he was pronounced dead because the UH-60 landed on top of him as we hit this telephone tower and flipped. Um,
Yeah.
he died right there. It didn't. He wouldn't have been allocated this award. And then
Right, because they're not posthumously giving it to him because, and then they're not like because it was us hurting him, not technically the enemy. They don't look at it as a higher achievement
exactly,
or
and then
anything.
we didn't do a couple of congressionals on that in Colorado when we came back and everything. Because for me personally, as an NCO, like I'm never gonna not stop fighting for my dudes,
Yeah.
getting what they deserve. And I'm to this day, I am still fighting for Jake to get that, because on his tombstone it says, um, he died on his on his death, May 28, 2014. It says recipient of like a Bronze Star recipient, and then his religious symbol, a beloved son, husband, and all that. And like, it shouldn't say Bronze Star recipient. It should
No.
say a Purple Heart recipient. And even though it's been 11 years since that happened, like the process to get all that stuff is still, I'm still working through it, because regulations change all the time and everything. And I went with that initial investigation. They told me, my platoon sergeant's like, hey, we're putting you in for a Silver Star for the actions that you did. Um, on the hospital bed in CAF, I had uh, the 1 star. I had all these dudes come in that were stationed at CAF. They're like, what you did, based off the aerial footage, the ISR footage that they had, was just like, it's crazy what I did with the injuries that I sustained. I never saw that
Yeah.
footage, but I've had people describe what they saw in that footage, because I don't remember that portion. All I remember is getting knocked out, waking up on the ground, and then just starting moving. But the
I yeah, I Tech, I want to get into this more about, after that cuz I think what you're doing is also heroic in itself of for that friend of yours that passed. I just got to take a quick break real
Okay,
quick. I'll be back in like 2 secs and we'll hop right back on.
okay, no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, we're back from the break. We're just talking, you this spectacular mission, which I can already hear from your acts, is heroic. But the more important fact was your buddy. You're still trying to fight for him to get that Purple Heart. Because my wife was also in the military. I just mentioned it to her how it's insane that they can't justify these actions, these politics of what's right and wrong, and can't be deemed necessary or whatever. Is especially in that time frame is just insane and asinine.
No, absolutely. Like I don't want to come off like pretentious or anything, where it's just like, oh, I believe I deserve this. I could care less. Like if I could take a time machine and not go through this and not experience this, I would not go through this again. Um, because my career, my whole military, uh, has been shifted because of this incident, and this changed the trajectory of my military career, I would say for a positive, but like at what mental cost and traumatic cost that I dealt with, I would not repeat the same thing if I had the opportunity to, because no one wants to lose a brother, and especially no one wants to lose the youngest dude in their platoon. Like that was Jake. Jake was a break, 21, 22 years old, newly married. He just got to the unit. He's from Colorado. He's from Thorne, Colorado. His wife, Katie, was is the sweetest woman on the planet. They they just got married. Lovebirds. Uh, the same mindset or the same outlook I had when I got counseled on my first duty station. I was like, that's me. And then I look at Jig and that's me if I didn't make it home, right? On that first deployment. So that's the way I look at it. Like, especially like when I choose my duty stations and like what I want to do with my military career, I obviously I'm going to put my family first. I could care less what the army
Sure.
wants from me or what kind of cookie cutter uh, pathway they want me to go. I could care less, um, based off like the experiences and like that I had in the last 5 years. In the last 5 years, like going to the trail instead of going to being an RI as a broadening assignment as a ranger qualified dude, or putting me into a duty station where it's like I can get a platoon sergeant position and get my KD time for that. Um, the Army prioritized me getting drill orders instead of KD time, and it back put me behind 2 years from my peers. Now I could care less. If the Army didn't care about that stuff, why should I care about it? I should just do whatever makes my family happy and what I want to do, not what the Army is telling me I need to do, or especially or others, especially on social media, which everyone and their mother has like an opinion on what you should do or what you should be doing now as in your career. And then my advice, just to advocate on that part, screw what anyone says. Do what makes you happy, because if you're doing something that makes you happy, you're gonna do it for a lot longer than when you're doing something that you're not content with, that you're just gonna half-ass it anyway and not devote yourself to it.
I agree 100%. I'm a dad of four and my beautiful wife. Like ever since I've had those, and then really the breaking point for me was drill, where I had done a full deployment of a year, and then immediately en route I did airborne and ALC, and then I went to Carson for a year, but it was COVID, and they gave me drill orders halfway through it, and then I picked up and moved again. Yeah,
What
as
year did you go to? What year were you at drill?
uh,
One sec, one
what
sec.
is that? 20? Yeah.
Okay, my bad. My printer was making a weird sound.
No, you're good. You're good. I was from 21 to 24. So,
Okay, so I was from 20. Yeah, I was a
oh,
COVID
okay.
drill as well, where I had to do like a
Yeah.
hybrid where you had to do like some of the teaching online, and then you had to go to the Drill
Yep.
Sergeant Academy, and then you had to wear a mask the whole time.
Well, and then we got shit on at our because number one, it's always awkward to talk about sometimes, but I was a AIT drill sergeant, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one, which a lot of people think, oh, it's cake or whatever. No, we had the same hours, and it's shittier because all the issues that come up in basic that those drills can't fix, we have to fix because they, for some reason, think everyone tells them, oh, you'll fix that in AIT or
Oh,
whatever, and
I'm
it's
to
like,
blame. I've definitely done.
yeah,
If there were
you
some
send me. I
issues, yeah.
guarantee you sent me soldiers. Like it's so funny.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely gave you probably so because I was a drill from 20 to 23, almost 23.
Yeah, so it lined up pretty close. You know, all that stuff, and then I lived close to an hour away, so I'd wake up at 2:45. I'd go to work, get home around 8 or 9, and that was eight Monday. Yeah, it was Monday through Friday, and then Saturdays it was about a half day, but you're still waking up at 2:45. Um, and then I don't want to ignore my kids, so we would go on trips or whatever like that Saturday or Sunday. But you're so like we talked
You're
about, you're
so
so
exhausted.
exhausted. It doesn't matter. Yeah. My wife would get pissed, but she eventually understood. But I would fall asleep in the car within 10 minutes every time we drive somewhere.
Yeah, bless my wife.
And
Bless my wife's heart. She has been like the best thing that's ever happened to me, because she even admits that being a drill was harder on our relationship than being deployed.
same, 100% the same. And I only have one, but it's so fucking hard because you're just even when you're home, you're not there, or you bring home traits. It took me a while. I had to break that,
Oh
but
yeah,
you bring home traits from work where you're just yelling or you think things should go perfectly because you say so, but it's your kids. Like you can't run it like that.
and
But that was my breaking point of like I'm not going to let the army tell me what to do anymore. Like I will do things for my family to make them comfortable over what like career progression is because like
absolutely.
and like I've seen what senior leaders are, especially in my MOS, and like a lot of them either put their families second or all they do is like tell their families, "Hey, this is what you signed up for. We're gonna follow my career where it needs to go," and that's so depressing to me. Like it,
You think your
whatever
kids
you lead
signed up
your
for that? Your kids didn't sign up for that.
hell no, hell no, and to just ignore them and put them on the back burner like that, I refuse to do.
Oh, absolutely. I am
It's
an advocate about doing what makes sense for the family. Like, was it Sergeant Major Grinston, family first? Like he had that was his thing. I'm
yeah.
a full support of family first. I don't like the army is gonna be the army. Someone's gonna fill in that spot. If not, they're gonna find within. And guess what? If I'm there or if I'm not there, it's gonna get done because it's such
Yep.
a huge, such a huge.
The cog can't stop turning.
It's not.
It can't
Yeah,
stop
it's
turning.
not. What am I gonna do? Like, and I learned that too. So like, oh, you try to fix things at your own unit. Like, oh, I need to change this and all that. Okay, do whatever your left and right limits are, but understand like it it worked beforehand before you got there. It's gonna work after you're gone. So don't lose a part of yourself trying to fix something that has is just not suited to change.
Yeah, it and that's a hard thing when you become a drill. That's another thing that you learn from that is to be, I'd say, a self starter or whatever. You got to fix a lot of things that nobody around you has solutions for. Like either other drills don't know the answer, or your chain of command, in my personal experience, did not have the answers I needed, like whatsoever. So you got to reach out and just figure out
Especially
shit.
during you
But
went during COVID. No one
yes,
had answers for that, and then
they
you're
called us
looked down
JKO
upon,
drills.
and then
It
you're
it
looked
was
down upon
crazy.
as a drill
Yeah,
because you're a COVID drill instead of just
right.
a pre-COVID drill. It was like, oh, this is how we used to do it, or you were a drill before, or you were a drill during first 100 yards or whatever, and not the shark attack. So you have a different mentality. Blah blah blah. It's like, hey man, like it's not my choice. It's the higher than me made these choices for us to do, not me. Like it, being a drill in the time frame that we were drills, like it was no man's land because no one had the right answers. And if you made an answer or you came up with a solution, and God forbid 6 8 months down the road, it was the wrong choice, you're getting hemmed up, not everyone else. Like, oh, Sergeant Tech, just Sergeant Tech said we need to do this. While we have to wear masks and stuff. It's like all that whole time frame and a whole time period. I just wish it was a race. None of it made sense. You're rucking next to each other. Put your masks in your pockets. We're stopping. Put your masks on.
You're on trans, put your mask on. Everybody has to have their mask on or we're getting kicked off the bus. Like what
What?
are we talking about?
And it wasn't even for the students because the students are all together. It's for the It was for the old civilian dude there.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like then pick out the cadre. There were there was so much cadre that could have been doing the bus stuff.
Oh yeah. We
Outsourced that
told
for
him
what?
we asked for bus. We were like, "Hey, send us the bus driver course. We'll drive and get a bus from T or whatever, TMC or whatever. We'll drive our own buses." And they're just like, we can't do that." I'm like,
Why?
"How can we not sign for a bus? We're the army." Like I know I've
We have
seen
our
the
own
parking lot. They
course. We
have
have our
them.
own course. We have the buses
Yes.
allocated to the battalions and to the units, we need to hire this overpaid civilian to do a bus driver. Like
I never. Yeah.
If Elon Musk wants a good way to get rid of a chunk, a huge chunk of every military post budget, fire all the bus drivers for the military. You don't need it on trade off because you have immense amount of cadre. Like I'm only going to speak from Fort Jackson because I from experience.
No, it's probably similar though.
So at Jackson, you have all these cadre dudes that are literally working 1 to 2 days, maybe 3 days a week on ranges. They're allocated to certain ranges. These ranges are only open on X amount of days. And commanders and all that stuff, they don't want to work on weekends, so neither do they. They don't work on weekends. So Monday through Friday, basically like 9 to 5 for these cadre dudes, right? They are off half the time anyway because if they're not, let's say if they were the cadre for the the graduation standard cadre, that's all they're doing. They're all their task guys to do that, and that's usually on the same day every week for a different cycle. So it's usually a Thursday or Friday. Thursday with a Friday makeup. So 2 days, 4 days of the week, they're not doing much. They could be bus drivers like half that time. Uh, and I can't. The army response would be, well, it's an insurance or a liability issue. Don't make it a liability issue. You have them
Yeah.
certified as bus drivers the same way you would certify the civilians.
Yeah.
And don't make
I.
drills do it. I
I.
would not. I
No.
would definitely not let the drills do it
Yeah.
because they already
Yeah.
are lacking in sleep, and like adding that tasking to them, like that just spells disaster.
There's other ways to figure this shit out, though. You could even make a support company that does shit. Like, there's a billion ways to cut the cheese on this, but like, it definitely is overdone by the civilian thing. I just saw that the DoD thing with Doge, they were planning on firing. I think they reversed it now, but it was like 8,000 or 80,000. I think it's eight
I think
thousand
it was eighty
VA
thousand.
employees, right?
80,000.
80,000. Okay, but me and you both know that while that sounds erratic, there are probably some of those dudes that need to go. Just in the VA, in the military health system, in the army in general, probably. Like all these jobs, there are some like trim the fat
Oh,
areas.
absolutely. And like, look at what is it, the CST areas, like those huge, like at Carson, you have the simulator area, that brand new building they had with this
Oh yeah.
simulator. How many civilians are there? And then all these other offices are not being utilized, and you're not going to use it. You majority of the units there not going to use it, and it's underutilized to a point where they're going to the companies. Hey, do you want to schedule this kind of training? How about we just minimize your work staff? Because these dudes are easily making $100,000 to $150,000 a person there. You have one secretary, then you have three maybe subject matter experts for the basic stuff that's there. That's it. And you cut all that fat. And like I've talked to friends of mine that are like at the VA hospitals at like Fort Bragg, and like they're she's my it's my squad leader's wife, my first team leader's wife, and we're still great friends. She works for the VA at Fort Bragg in the hospital over there, and there's so much. She's like, I'm glad. I'll get fired. I don't care because my job is like a filler job. These jobs they're there like there's a lot of people that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or they're so underutilized that it's the cost of them having there. It doesn't benefit anyone. And then there's
It
jobs that we could do ourselves, like a support company, the buses, range cadre, range like fixing the ranges. Okay, I understand fixing the ranges, but cadre for the ranges that could be on us. Like, um, what else? At the BCT level, like you have all these civilians that don't know what they're doing because things keep changing so much.
Mhm.
You and then you have the introduction of officers at the BCT level because Why?
Yeah,
Why?
that do nothing. That the PLs or whatever, they do nothing. They do some of the paperwork to help you, which is nice, but at the end of the day, you can do it yourself. Like I don't.
They're not getting that drill sergeant pay, so they don't have to be there on the weekends, right? And these are things I've heard from like my company commander. I'm not coming in on a weekend for a range because I don't get paid an extra $300. Sir, you're a captain. You're a damn captain. I'm a staff sergeant at the time. I'm gonna be here, and you're telling me because I get paid $300 extra that I'm going. I like you are exempt from this. You make like a grand and a half more than I do, and you're like it was an 82nd captain, and he says this to me, and I said, "Sir, if we were back in the 82nd, and the battalion commander goes up to you, he's like, hey, we got this range opened up on Saturday. Your guys need to finish certifying all that stuff. You're gonna tell him negative, sir. I am not working on Saturday. He's gonna tell you, yes, you are not working on Saturday. You will not be working under me at all ever again. Here's your Gomar. But on the trail, it's just like, nah, I don't get paid that extra money, so I'm not doing that stuff. And
Well, because there's no oversight. There's no oversight at like the battalions barely pay attention because there's so much shit going on, and they don't want to deal with it. And then the brigade is so detached because they're trying to watch what
numbers.
At Leonardwood. Well, at Leonardwood, it's what 148, 248, 310, 210, 84th, and 58 trans. That's well, not 58 trans. That's 5 battalions of BCTs essentially. One of them is AIT, but either way, hundreds, thousands of soldiers every day, hundreds of cadre and drill sergeants. Like they're not coming down to check, which I wish they would sometimes, and I think they're getting better about it. But god damn, like have some accountability on the support side as opposed to just nailing drill sergeants.
Yeah, because the justification was we're introducing officers to the BCT world so that the trainees can see what officer notice and all. These kids could care less. All they're doing is scared senseless. Like hat, no hat, officer, cadre, dehatted. Like you're adding
Shut my
this.
mouth. They're not gonna say nothing. They're not gonna ask them questions. They're gonna go. Every drill's gonna go. Shut your fucking mouth near them.
Yeah,
Like do not talk to
no,
them.
no, and then like, well, they're trying to learn the basics, and you're trying to throw in like, oh, when this guy comes out with his camouflage two black stripes on his chest that's only this big, if you see that, you gotta call him to the position of attention. If you see one though, and it's like that big, you also gotta call him to the position of attention. But if you see a brown round or you see a sergeant with a drill sergeant patch, like you gotta go at ease, or the high. If you see first sergeant at ease, these guys have so much they're trying to absorb in, and you throwing officers involved, like there's no benefit whatsoever
Yeah.
to that. And like if and I would remove them this second. If I had the opportunity, I would remove them. Put them in their logistics. Put them in logistics. Put them in S1. Stop. Uh, Lower the amount of manning that you have for your staff on the BCT level by empowering your junior officers to do it, because that's what they're getting paid the big bucks for, not to oversight, not oversight of like, oh, I was a PL for a platoon. Okay, great, you're doing the paperwork. It takes you 2 or 3 months to train up to understand the paperwork. By that time, 6 month mark, you're probably gonna go an XO position, right? Because
Yeah.
your career path can't change, even though you're a butter bar. You're going to be O2, and then you need your PL time for not certain MOSs or certain. Yeah, you don't need traditional line time. Then you're to go to your staff time. So you could be butter bar to captain all in the same BCT side. And what have you done on nothing like of your job of like, hey, I am signal or 42 alpha like S1 and stuff like
You haven't done nothing
you're
though. It doesn't. It's immaterial at that point. It doesn't matter.
and it's just like such a waste because I don't know about you guys, but we had a civilian already to do it.
I wish.
we had
No, we were
we
like
had
one of the only ones that didn't have a civilian that were in our ops. We kept getting fucking E5s
One
that
sec.
that's a whole nother thing, right?
Yeah, he had E5s.
No, you got me wound up now. E5's like they would throw in an E5, which were Seaburn, right? So they would throw in this E5 Seaburn that like he had either been down, I don't even like maybe at a company level or some shit, doesn't really have much experience. They get there, they get stuck for 2 to 3 years doing ops work. Well, an E5 doesn't understand counselings. They don't understand a chapter packet. They don't understand any of that shit because a lot of us are just admin. We're working the op shop or we're the what's called the like ops clerk NCO for a first sergeant,
Okay, yeah.
or we go to a Seaburn company where you're just training your job and that's it. No one's going to know especially at TRADOC, the nuances of chapter paperwork, Article
Oh,
15s,
flags.
flag, fixing orders, fixing MACP, EFMP. We're submitting paperwork, and then they go, which like I liked my ops clerks, like they were good dudes, but they don't understand it, and I don't knock them for
And it's
that
not
because
part of
like
the. It's not part of the realm of like of what their job
no,
is.
I I became a drill at 6 years. I started the trail time at my 6 year mark. Um, did 3 years there. I barely knew the shit when I got there. You learn really fast because you got to figure it out. But like an E5 at 2 3 years with no technical experience, hell no, they're not gonna know all that shit. And I wouldn't knock them for it. We would get mad every now and then, but like for the most part, you have to be a little understanding, but you're so frustrated with the system at that point. And all the whole thing about the counselings have to be perfect. Your sworn statements have to be done by certain people. Like all this little shit that you get a brief on it for 2 minutes when you in process, and that's it. And I don't.
Yeah, and the drill sergeant academy does not prepare you for any of that stuff.
Hell
It
no.
doesn't prepare you
Hell
for
no.
any of that stuff. It prepares you to spit different styles of pitches.
Yeah.
PRT, the importance of PRT, pitching, and talking in front of people. Majority of the time, and then what you have
It's a
your
good public. It's a good public speaking class.
yes,
That's really
but
what
it
it
should
is.
it should be reformatted to being more catching everyone up to speed because yes, we all go to BLC, right, basic leaders course, and you're supposed to learn X, Y, and Z from the BLC from BLC. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't learn how to counsel, the importance of that stuff. Like it's not something that is it's emphasized, but it's not supported in the direction it needs to go. And like the Drill Sergeant Academy, in my personal opinion, does a terrible job with preparing you for the trail. Hands down, like I didn't do a single outside of the first 72 hours. The next decision, like that pitch for the first three, and that's it. PRT was more of like a structured thing, but it wasn't as rigorous as it has to be because you have all the other drills right there. Like,
I want to know your thoughts on it because like my first 6 months of drill was or being a drill was drinking from a fire hose from these guys that my drills that were there had already been there for 2 years. There were three of them on their third year, so they were already pretty crusty, and they were older. Not they were older in age, but they were also like they were at their 10 year marks or whatever. And me and another drill were so young, and they like that stuff. The 6 month we were just drinking from a fire hose, getting told we were wrong, trying to figure this shit out. So we're crusty at that point. And then you got the year in between that where they were leaving, so we kind of took on the role of the leadership. And this is after COVID, so there weren't a lot of drills. I don't know if you saw that too, but the numbers kind of dwindled down for us,
yeah, but
where
but the
we didn't
requirement
have.
went up by one per company.
Yeah, which they didn't follow. Which they didn't follow regardless. Like we never met what the ratio was supposed to be,
Yeah,
because for us it was 2 drills per class for 120 soldiers. So like, yeah, it's a lot to take on. Sometimes we had three, but half the time the third drill sucked. So like,
and
it
when
was
are
hit
they
or
gonna do?
miss.
When are they gonna do anything for career progression?
We asked that. We kept saying we don't have time for college or going to
schools that
MRT or EO or whatever. We can't go to any school because we're too busy always with the privates. Because for us, you got to do PT. You have 30, 40 minutes to change and eat breakfast. Then you go train or you go to their training sites. And then when they get back, it's question, question, question. Then you go home. And then you got FTXs. You got stupid training. You got to run people to appointments all the time. I mean, all this stuff. And it was that year though, you're really learning it and you're building your rapport and you become the drill you're supposed to be, right? Like your personality becomes that drill and whether it's good or bad, it's there. And then your last 6 months of the 2 year mark at least, it was like I'm kind of fucking over this. There's a lot of new drills. I don't think they think the same as me. And it kind of becomes an old guard issue where I'm like, and then I did my 3rd year and I'm like, I've become the people I hated. I'm crusty. I'm getting pissed off. Shit's changing all the time. And I imagine it's still happening. Did you kind of go through a similar experience or was
yeah,
it?
no, absolutely. Like, so I had drills that were prior to COVID, and then we were the COVID drills, the brand new COVID drills. And because I was KD complete or my E6 and I was promotable, right? Like, they're like, oh, you're gonna be a senior drill sergeant as soon as possible. I was like, again, going back to like how humble I am, like if I don't know it, I'm gonna not. I was like, why would you give me this position when you have a dude who's been here for 2 years, who you're telling him to train me up for his position, the position that he's at right now? He can take it. I can learn from him, and then fast forward, I'll just take a different platoon. It's none of this matters to me. I'm on 11 Bravo. It doesn't. None of it matters career wise. Like I am still doing, and people have like different opinions on this, but every 9 weeks I'm being a platoon sergeant to 100, almost it was 120 to 160 brand new civilians go become military service members, soldiers. None of that counts for my platoon sergeant time. But I am doing the things that you're saying. I have to do all that stuff with the help of a civilian, um, the other drills. Why would I take that guy's position and try to drink from a fire hose if this dude's already doing it, excelling at it? Why can't I just work under him? It's like, well, because you have more time in service than he does. Who cares? And then
Who
that,
cares? It's a job. It's completely different from regular army.
yeah,
Let them do the job.
yeah. I was like, oh no, you need to square yourself away and learn this. I was like, no, I don't. It's like I could just be a piece of shit, and like, no, I don't. But I'm like, I'm going to learn from him. He can still be in charge of me. It's no changes. I am just learning the position and still like implementing myself. Like I respect him because he's been in the position for 2 years. He's earned that position, and you want me because I've come in with a KD complete time and I'm gonna get promoted soon. Like no, like it's dumb. It's dumb. Like he runs a great ship. Like why can't I just be under him? He's like, well, because you're gonna be a higher rank than he is. So who gives a shit? Like that. It doesn't, especially in the drill side world. It doesn't really matter. Um,
No.
but
I had a similar experience with I was finishing up my 2nd year going into my 3rd year and we were all staff sergeants, but at the AIT there's only one senior drill sergeant for the company
yeah,
because they kind of just make sure each class is going good because they overshadow each other. And new E7 came in and she was like brand new drill and they were like she's going to become the senior now. And I'm like, okay, I'm not trying to like at a certain point you have to start saying you're like I'm not trying to shit on her. I know this shit better though. Like I'm not trying to railroad her. You're going to have issues with people like her understanding what's happening. And they were like she's an E7. She needs that position. That's what it's supposed to be.
then
And I'm like,
then
first of all,
then
there's no MTO for that. Like, there's no MTO technically for a senior drill sergeant for us.
oh, for you
So
guys
we were
no,
like,
but for everybody else
no,
there is. It's like it was a
right.
4 identifier or something like that.
but even for even more reason, like that's not an M toad slot. You
Just
don't need to
and
have
it
her
doesn't
as
really
that.
matter. You could just write it in her
And
NCOER. That's it.
right, and it sucks because I really at first she got there too, and I was pretty animalistic about it because I'm like,
I've
oh my
heard.
god, like I don't want to have to keep going through this. But she was really good. We became friends and stuff, and she was a very good drill. But even she was like, this is so much shit going on. I don't know where to fucking focus. And I'm like, yeah, that's the job. Like it sucks. You learn how to eventually prioritize, but god damn, I really hate that whole senior drill sergeant thing though, where they really focus on the rank now. It's
It's
asinine.
dumb. It's dumb. The other things that I saw is like if you correct like not all MOSs are created equally. So even in my own MOS, like 11 Bravos and everything, there's pieces of shit in there. Like
Yeah.
again, don't want to sound pretentious, but like I will go by doctrine. Like it, the advice I got when I became a drill is like doctrine works both ways. So learn doctrine. You won't be wrong. So you always have a battle buddy. Learn doctrine. You can't go wrong.
Yeah.
I had another. And I'm always willing to like learn. I won't take the main position seat or take the like put myself up there like oh I'll learn through freaking force. No, if someone's doing the job, I'm gonna learn through them. Freaking shadow them while being humble enough to know like yeah I outrank them, but I'm under them. Not that's not outside the realm of like what I would traditionally do. Like that's just how I am. But you have these drill sergeants that are like on the 11 Bravo side, they're like, they ain't studied, they don't know doctrine. All they have is war stories, and they'll stick to that as their whole method of teaching. When in reality, TRADOC does it, it's foolproof. You open the PowerPoint slide, you teach from the slide. You don't even need to know what it says on the slide. You just have to read off the slides. And then you should have these basic understandings on how to describe certain things, like for example, land nav, right? But we would always have these drills that are like, oh, I'll just throw it from the hip. What? No, man. Like, don't teach from the hip. Teach from what they approve from, and you can't go wrong. It's
Yeah.
there's no issue whatsoever. But I've had dudes where I've had to talk to them, and then it goes from talking to yelling them to getting direct into their face, and it's like it was very like I got moved around in a lot of different companies because I'm very vocal of things like if I don't like how it looks or if it doesn't if it's not the right answer, I'm not gonna stay quiet and be like, hey, we should I should look the other way. If something's going wrong and I know it's wrong, I'm gonna step up and say something about it. And a lot of
Yeah.
drills were like, well, this is how I've been doing it for X amount of cycles, 10 cycles. So you've been doing it wrong for 10 cycles and no one has had the audacity to tell you've been doing it wrong. And I'm telling you you're doing it wrong and now you're being defensive. And it's like,
And even that, why can't you just say, "Oh shit, I'm sorry. Like I really thought this was right for 10 cycles."
there's
Like
no way they could think it's
it,
right. Like, they don't,
you know.
there's no way you could think.
Oh, damn.
For the example I'm thinking about is that I had one drill who's like, I've taught land nav for 10 cycles and I've just did it on the whiteboard. You're gonna miss so many things off that
Yeah.
stuff. And a few cycles before I got there, they had a group of trainees missing on the highway on the land nav course. The highway is like a click and a half
Oh man.
outside of the
Yeah.
training area,
Jesus.
and it's Jackson, so it's a really easy land nav where it's just
Yeah.
like it's made for basic training for basic trainings. And this dude tells me like, no, I'm just gonna teach land nav. I'm gonna teach land nav off the whiteboard. People, the trainees are usually more receptive that way. And I was like, I'm new to the company. I was like, no, it's my week. It's my duty week. You're gonna do it off the PowerPoint. I'll set it up for you if you just don't want to log in and set up the projector and stuff. That's what usually it was. Like, oh, I don't want to set it
Yeah, it's
all
like
up.
half.
I was
Yeah.
like, I'll set it all up. I'll stay here. I won't leave without my CAC. I'll set everything up for you. All you gotta do is open it. It'll be open. All you gotta do is hit the next button, the slide button. And here's
And
the
And it's like you do that, right? If you want to teach from the hip, okay, just read the slides first. Just read the slide and then be like, hey, from my personal experience too, this. And then you keep, but you got to establish that basic level of doctrine like you're talking about, or it can go haywire.
You're
There
just
can be a lot of
missing
things
you're
missed.
just gonna
Yeah.
miss things because for you have a grasp and understanding of what you're teaching. This kid who all he does is play Call of Duty, that's the only grasp that he has. You're gonna teach them. We're gonna teach city kids land navigation, and you're gonna be like, well, here's the different types of north, blah blah blah, and you gotta add here, subtract there, you gotta find your deviation angle, here's your legend, blah blah. That's a lot. But if you're going slide by slide, you're not gonna miss something that it's designed for you to go. So fast forward, I told him you're gonna teach from the slides. It's my D week. I'm the senior. This is my second year as a drill, and he's like, "Well, no, I'm gonna do it this way." I was like, "The fuck are you are?" Like, he's like, "Well, your position is just made up. You're a senior drill sergeant. That position is just fucking made up." And I looked at this other 11 Bravo, and I said, "Get in the fucking office." So I get him inside because I didn't want to do it in front of the trainees.
Right.
I said, "You are a fucking staff sergeant. I'm a sergeant first class. If we were both on the fucking line and you said that shit to me, you would have three other squad leaders beating your fucking ass, telling me that I'm made up. My position is fucking made up. Like, regardless of how you feel about the position being made up on the trade doc side, I still follow, like, I still outrank you, and it's my fucking week. I'm telling you, this is how you're gonna fucking teach it. The company commander's in the background and, like, in his office, he's like, oh, what's going on? I was like, this guy's about to get his fucking ass beat because he tells me my fucking job is just fucking made up. I was like, then why the fuck am I here? If my job's fucking made up and you are not always you're the same drill that keeps coming up with the critiques every cycle of like fucking up, not knowing where he's at, all this shit, and then I'm the first person to tell you like, hey man, this is what you're doing that's wrong. Like you're gonna do it this way, and you're gonna just resist it, and then you're gonna throw that out at me. You're gonna meet some resistance back because I'm responsible for the week and for the training. But yeah, like to your questions, like all the time, and like MOSs are not created equally. Um, I've had some staff sergeant star first classes that were uh, top notch, and then I'd have other staff sergeants and stuff that are just like the bottom of the barrel. Because
Yeah.
I know they appreciate it at the drill sergeant academy. The top 15% of all NCOs go to the drill sergeant academy. That's a lie. That's a
Yeah.
goddamn
That's
lie.
100% a lie.
Yeah, if my
Yeah.
OML number tells me anything, if my OML number told me anything, it's a damn lie. Like I had the worst OML number. It's like, oh well, it's gonna help you when you hit for EA. No, my number is still terrible for EA now. Like and I can care less. Like I have 4.5 years left. I'm gonna do what makes the best sense for my family. There's no war right now. Uh, Historically speaking, like unless something that happens like that happened in New York City 9/11, we're not gonna go be pushed into another war because of like the amount of debt that we have in historic um like repetitions. Like it's historically Republicans who really don't a Republican president doesn't really put us into a
Right.
war, with the exception of George Bush because he had 9/11. But
They
it's crazy.
I yeah, it yeah. Let's we'll get off the drill sergeant tirade for a while cuz I guarantee we could talk all day
Oh
about it.
yeah, absolutely. It
It's
was
there's so many. Yeah.
like
You
the biggest pet peeve I had, the biggest pet peeve as an 11 Bravo going to the BCT world was that we would have MOSs that would eventually get attached to soft units or be attached to infantry units, and they have no understanding or no familiarization with crew served weapon systems, just the M4. We had because of COVID, we had no 249s, no 240 familiarization. We have the ranges. We did have. They stopped ordering the ammunition for it, so they
yeah.
never. got reintegrated into the BCT world. And I have my cousin's at a drill sergeant now at Jackson. And I just asked him the other day, I was like, hey man, what dumb stuff are they doing now? And I was like, they're instead of doing patrol based activities in the FTXs, they're doing linear defenses. And like I was like, I'm a Ranger School instructor. We do defense here at Ranger School in our phase, and the students have always have an issue with a defense because they don't understand the coordination efforts that it takes to talk to adjacent units. Like your interlocking sectors of fire has to be within the left and right limits with your adjacent units, and like especially
Yeah.
you're seizing a massive area, you need to have coordinations on both sides. How are you guys doing that at the BCT level if they don't have radios? They have no crew served weapon systems.
They got runners. They're just runners and
They have
M4s.
M4s. They have M4s in a defense. What
Yeah.
it it makes no sense. Like
Yeah, that's wild.
it's not even a 10 level task. They should learn the patrol based activities, a basic understanding of a triangle method where it's just like your key weapon systems would be in apexes. You
Mhm.
have interlocking sectors of fires on your leg that's respective to your squad. Um, your attachments shouldn't be a part of your patrol base sectors of fire because they can always be moving depending on FPL, your final protective line, and your primary direction of fire. Things, all this stuff that they're trying to do at the BCT level, dude, at Ranger School, at the Premier Leadership School, are having issues with in the final
Yeah.
phase.
It's great. I didn't, I don't know too much about that because I'm not. Like you said, I'm sport, or like I said, I'm sport MOS. I've had some experience with training like that, but no, not to that degree. That is more advanced shit that people don't necessarily need to focus on at the BCT level.
No,
Like especially with how the soldiers are now, it needs to go back to like true basic of understanding of this is a weapon system. Like, just have them sleep with it again. That helps people tremendously. Just your basic warrior 10 level task.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
that's what basics should be. It should not be thrown in uh crazy shit like that.
Hear,
Just
move,
have them come
communicate.
out.
That's
Yes.
your main focus for the first 9 weeks. You really need to learn how to shoot. You need how to learn how to move. You need how to learn how to communicate with each other.
Yes. 100%. You you do your time as a drill. I didn't really understand it. So you went from Carson
Okay,
to
so I
Schofield
went to
yeah.
Carson. Yeah, I went
We'll
to
jump back to
Carson.
that. Yeah.
Got on that WTB. I reenlisted. Went to Hawaii, and in Hawaii, I was stationed 127 with the Wolfhounds, and that's where I did most of my schooling, like air assault, Ranger School, and then combatives level 2. Those are the three big ones I did while
Nice.
I was at in Hawaii. Then after Ranger School, I graduated Ranger School in 0516, so April timeframe of 2016. Then I tried out. Then I did Best Ranger in 2018, right before I PCSed. I didn't do great at all. Like I didn't nothing to be.
Well, you went to best ranger
Yeah,
competition, man. Like
yeah, I didn't make it past day one. When they had a double elimination or elimination for the first time on day one. Didn't make it past the ruck. I think the highest position we were in was like right before getting dropped was 33rd or 35th place. I'm proud of it. It's not what I would want. I would have wanted to have finished it, but like my partner got hurt on it. I had a cracked rib on it from my own mistakes. Then from 2018, I PCS from Hawaii back to Carson to go to Third Brigade, which was a mechanized unit.
okay.
So for that mechanized unit, it was again all the same thing as a drill. Like you had to drink from a fire hose and stuff, right? Like learning a whole new platform of the infantry, like especially when one as a staff sergeant, like learning a whole new platform and how a Bradley works was
Yeah.
rough. But I did a year train up with them, and then I deployed in 2019 to Kuwait for a couple months, and then Syria, and then I did like 5 6 months in Syria, which was a blast. Um,
Oh, really?
yeah, I loved it. I mean, the area I was in, it was just we were so disconnected. You knew when higher ups were getting there because we were the only ones in that area in the art in that part of the Damascus Highway in the south. Everybody else was to the north. We were like 40 miles, 50 miles from the Jordan border. It was we were isolated and it was great. I come back from that deployment. Um, my sergeant major, I didn't really get along with my sergeant major. He was a tanker. They had the pre ranger program at Carson, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to. So I did that for a year, and then when there, I messaged the division command sergeant major. He was my old brigade sergeant major. Give me one sec.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So he was my brigade command sergeant major. Became the division sergeant major for from Hawaii to Carson. He became the division command sergeant major. So I messaged him. I was like, "Hey, this is I want to be part of that the pre ranger program that you guys just started up in 2019. I think that's the direction of where I want to go and everything." And he was all on board, following the same model they had at the Lightning Academy in Hawaii, where it's like certain battalions, certain brigades are you're tasking certain individuals that are qualified to go to these schoolhouses that are on internal. So I stayed there for roughly a year. Right before I came back in 2019. Um, then 2020, he's like PCSing out, and then I was like, okay, now my window is about to be opened up. I'm gonna go re-enlist to go X, Y, and Z, and I come down and orders for drill,
Oh.
and I'm like,
So now you got to re-enlist to make time
no,
requirements or
sorry,
whatever,
I didn't
right?
have to realize. I did a 6 year contract out of Hawaii. I did a
Oh.
6 year contract, so I couldn't re-enlist to get out of it.
Yeah.
So I still had so I'm at year three. I had 3 more years left on that contract, and they're like, "Well, just that's enough time for you to be a drill." The second I got that email at like 10 in the morning, 11 o'clock, I am reaching out to my branch manager. He's like, "Hey, you're not being considered. You're going to be a drill," and I was like, "Well, do I have any choice on where I want to go?" He's like, "Well, yeah." I mean, it's like it's the first day. I was like, I want to go to Jackson." And he goes, "You're an infantry drill. Why do you want to go to Jackson?" I was like, "Because there's enough dudes, enough good leaders at Benning. There's you're gonna need some good leadership at Fort Jackson, and I'd like to go there. So go to Jackson, have a miserable 2.5 years as a drill there. I think within the 2 years I was there, I think there were 6 months that I really enjoyed it, and it was when I was in DECO 339. I was under Becker, and I had two other drills. We were in Deco. We were the Wolfhounds. That was the best 6 months I had as a drill because we were fighting on who would go home, like who would stay, and we are like, hey, you need like we. That's how much we loved being around each other because we fed off each other's energy, and it was just
Yes.
a great. Uh, four. It was us four was just great to work together with. And we fed off each other because the senior was Becker and he was a fister. Dude was a by the book kind of dude, and I love that. I love the by the book kind of dude because that means like he's watching out for you, you're watching out for him, and the doctrines by your. It's like the rules and regulations are on your side. Then I got promoted, and then I had to go to a different company. So they sent me to
Yeah.
our ACO to clean it up because what I did in Deco, well, what we did in Deco is our platoon, us four, cleaned up all Deco, and we are a well-oiled machine as all of us were. We were always watching out for each other. Yeah, there's always that one platoon of drills that are just like the worst, and like they're not planning stuff in. Like they're always like substandard, right? And it's
Yep.
just like, and for us, it was our first platoon,
Yeah.
and every time it was their duty week, we knew that we had to pick up the slack and all that shit, and they didn't really care, blah blah. But so Deco was a well-oiled machine, and Star Major talked to me. He's like, "Hey, you need to go be a senior in in ACO and clean it up over there. And I went in there heavy. I went in there gonna change everything up, and I met so much resistance that like when I tell you like I was at the end of my rope, I was at SLC at the end of my effing rope with like ready to drive off a bridge, ready to drive off the bridge in the back of SLC, right on the Chattanooga River. I had a plan. I was there,
Jeez,
and
man.
I had a bottle of whiskey in my hand. I was in my truck. Truck was on, and then I get a phone call from the division's command sergeant major, Sergeant Major Tavernier, and Sergeant Major Tavernier, like he followed me on social media. He was my first sergeant in Hawaii for HHC. He noticed on my social media like how depressed I was getting like over time,
Yeah.
and he called me right before I was gonna end it all, and he literally took me off the edge. So that dude, that intervention from that senior leader, uh, saved my life because I was at my tail's end. Like I reached out, a little backstory on it. Like my promotion got deferred, and then it got from E6 to E7. My OML number got skipped for some reason. The reason was I did Best Ranger. My unit never sent my paperwork to HRC schools to defer my school date. When they did, it was 5 days too late. So the SLC was divided into two phases: phase one, phase two. Phase two, I was canceled out of. Phase one, I looked up, I showed up as a no show. So that so
Oh.
I lost. I ruptured my Achilles. I ruptured my Achilles, my MCL, ACL on my left leg from Best Ranger. My coach from Best Ranger dropped us the month beforehand, so we were out there, me and my partner, out there to survive at Best Ranger. Did terrible. I think we were like 50th or 48th place was our highest place. We were last in like everything because like our training, we had no one like no help whatsoever, um, and no fault to my partner. I just sucked. I was overtrained. I followed his coaching to the T, and then I was burnt out. I burnt out too early. And when Best Ranger came
Yeah.
around, like I was, I had nothing in the tank from the gun. Um, so I'm in a low point, real low point in my life. But the battalion's like, we're not paying for the housing or for the hotel room for you guys to stay at Best Ranger. You had adequate housing establishments at Fort or at Camp Rogers, which was an open
Yeah.
bay. It was an open bay. It was just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
You know what's sorry, I hear all this, man, and I've been there. Trust me, I've been there where you're at the edge and you fucking hate it. You're done. You're like I'm at that point. But then you look back, like for me seeing what you've done from, being in Queens to where you are there, you've done so much with your life. It's amazing what you've done. And I like and I've had people tell me that that you get to a point of like you're done and then everyone on the outside is like you're crushing it. But inside you feel like no,
you
I'm
only look at the
fucking
failures.
hate.
You only look at the
Yes, you only look at that. But then it really takes something to switch where you got to be like, okay, maybe I'm not that. Maybe I'm something better. But it's so hard to keep the optimistic view over seeing the shit.
well for me and my downfall is like social media has been just a huge factor for it. Like um, I I I share my stories and like share my resiliency on an open platform for everyone to see. And as much as it's a positive, it's also a negative because you're opening yourself up to people who have not come to grasp with their own shortcomings and their own insecurities, and they are going to project those insecurities onto you. So eventually, all that negative energy will affect you, no matter how resilient you were. And for me, is like yes, I accomplished all these things, and I was super super pumped for all of it, but it was a series of events that just kept bringing me lower and lower and lower. And then social media on top of that was just like the imposter syndrome that you feel like I am not all this that I people tell me I am, you get this imposter syndrome, like where no, that's not me. Like I'm just a turd, blah blah. But for me, like
Where
I drill. I came back from the, uh, I was going to SLC, and I reached out. My deferment didn't get involved. My OML number got skipped, so I should have gotten promoted at SLC. On top of that, bonuses. It was the last time 11 Bravos have had a bonus, a reenlistment bonus of I had $11,000 reenlistment bonus
oh
thrown out the
damn.
window because
Oh,
so
come on.
$11,000. My unit's like, hey, we're not paying for you to go to Best Ranger because you had adequate. Even though I showed them the regulations and everything, my partner was a captain. There's no way a
Well, the whole
captain.
GTC thing is like figuring out all that the DTS stuff. I want to real quick
Yeah.
before we I want to hear the end of the story. I got to take a quick break.
Okay.
We'll get right back into this, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, man.
Yeah.
I have to piss again because it's been an hour.
Yeah.
We've been talking
Yeah.
for a while. Are you doing okay though?
No, no, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
I got
good. Okay.
another
I'll
I
be
got
right back.
another half an hour, and then I have to get ready for my run.
We're about to have a Sean Ryan episode, man. This I didn't know how comfortable you'd be talking about stuff, but you got a story, man.
Yeah, I'm very very open about um opening. I mean, that's due to the therapy that I went through, like at WTV, like going to learning how to communicate, and I think that's one of the biggest things I learned was like that's made my marriage so it making it work. You know what I'm saying? Was me being able to articulate the emotions that I'm feeling in a way that I can explain to another person.
It's the
And
same for me and her. Dude, because I didn't want to talk about shit as a drill. That really was my peak. I was pretty sheltered coming back from deployment, but I was at group, so I was still kind of chill. Then I wasn't bad, but then that kind of put me over the edge, and we went and talked to people. Like I went and got help, and the biggest thing I've learned is like number one, you apologize for shit. Like, don't ever just harbor shit. You either say it or you say that they're feeling, they're making you feel that way and we need to figure something out.
yeah, no,
And,
absolutely.
or just, yeah, or you being like, I'm frustrated because this is happening, this is happening. And I'm not perfect at it still by no means, but it definitely is something that it's a major tool that I think a lot of the Army ignores. Like,
No, it's absolutely like it's like, hey, man up, or just like, hey, put that on the back burner. Like I don't know what I watched something where it was like the army doesn't teach you how to deal with your issues, just how to put it in the back burner and not think about it because the mission has to come first. And then when there's no mission, all these issues come out, and then how do you address them? Like, hey, especially on the drill sergeant side, it was you've mentioned it. Like it was rough because you had to turn on a switch to be a drill, and then turn it off when you get home. Turn it on when you're a drill, and sometimes that switch you overuse it so much that it's on and you can't turn it off. And I
mhm.
saw that with how I was acting towards my kids, and that was a big issue that I was happy that we addressed, me and my wife, through like behavioral health and therapy.
Yeah, yeah, what we'll keep it going because I'll probably include all that because that's really good
Uh-huh.
stuff to talk about. But um, you're talking about you're over the line. You got they're not even going to cover Best Ranger, which is insane to me. I don't even get how they justify that. But
Well,
you're going through all this.
so
Yeah,
in the welcome package that you get, that gets it's usually like the welcome package from ARTB get pushed out weeks ago, like weeks prior to the Best Ranger, or almost months prior. And in there, they're like, hey, you can have housing and all that stuff. You can get the Abrams Hall, right? A lot of units like to go to Fort Benning 29 days prior, because at 30 days or anything over 30 days, your
acclimate or whatever. Well, over 30 days, it's the pay, right?
yeah, the pay changes from
Yeah.
one standard to another, and it's a big jump down. So a lot of units like to show up there 29 days prior and acclimate, get in some awesome training that's on the area, and then you have your pre-week and all that. But being at Jackson, they didn't want to do any of that stuff, and I I pushed it to my coach, and my coach he would push back. He's like, "Hey, they're gonna pay for this, but they won't pay for that." And then I was just like, "Okay, it doesn't make sense on why they wouldn't pay for this, blah blah." But as long as they're paying for the housing, and we get to sleep, we had good couple of nights of sleep before the competition. That'd be great. You know what I'm saying? And then last second, he's like, "Well, there's no funding for this. Like, what do you mean there's no funding? Like, we're trade off. There's tons of funding. It's like you could like you could find all that stuff." So we went through it, submitted it all, everything went good, and then we started getting like after Best Ranger, I started getting messages saying, "Hey, this is gonna get denied," all that stuff. Battalion and brigade wasn't tracking this. I was like, "There's emails that you guys are CC'd on tracking this stuff, and
And
there's
they should have
transcripts."
already had to sign an
It
authorization. They should
was.
have already signed.
It
Yeah,
had
I don't
16 pins
how
and
the
everything.
money's already fucking there. What it?
Yes. And then they're like, "Well, we're not gonna pay for the we'll pay for the room, but we won't pay for the per diem, like the food and stuff." And I'm like, "I'm a drill. You're telling me I have to pay this all this stuff out of pocket." So my deferment didn't go through for Best Ranger. I screwed up. I got hurt at Best Ranger. I get back to the line. I get an SLC date. The next SLC date. I'm in SLC. I'm having a pretty positive experience in the beginning, and I'm fourth overall in my whole class, and then I fail um, vehicle ID by one or two vehicles, right? And I'm a light infantry dude coming from a mechanized unit. So like for a while there, I should know mechanized, like I should know vehicle identification and stuff, but like that was never my strong suit, especially on like the train up for like or table one, table two, the testing portion. That was definitely not my strong suit. So that week, or I made a fucking TikTok, and then this about getting a 97 or 96 or 98 average in the class, being fourth overall, and not being on commandant's list. That video, one of the SLGs, one of the instructors saw it, and they put it in their group chat, and they started laughing about it. But that weekend, I just got drunk, and then as that was it, like everything was just coming down. Like I have nothing to show for the year. I I had no help whatsoever. Every time I reached out to my immediate leadership, they're like, "Okay, we'll fix it. We'll fix it. We'll fix it." Now I'm out 11 grand from a realistic bonus. I'm not gonna get anything, and I'm at the tail end of waiting out to reenlist. So I was like, everything was just going down, and then Sergeant Major Tavernier calls me up, and then he literally goes, "I will fix it. Wait, you get back. You get back from SLC. We will fix. Don't worry about the pay issue. I will get you the money from. I will find the funding to pay for the hotel that we promised you and the food that we promised you." I was like, "Okay, Roger that." And then we will fix. He's like, "We'll fix the deferment issue." So I get back from SLC, and I go to his office in division. He's like, "Okay, talk to me. Tell me what's the issue." I was like, "Well, the civilian HRC schools and HRC promotions. They don't talk to each other. They're in the same department. They don't talk to
Same
each other."
cubicle shit. They don't
Yes,
even
they don't.
talk. Yeah.
They're next door to each other. They don't talk to each other via community via. So the schools one never took off my flag. So I never saw that I had a flag until my number got skipped. So they needed to remove that flag in April. They never did. It's June, July timeframe. Now there's no more bonuses. I can't even backdate it. To change it. All this dude needed to do is unclick a box. I reached out to my sergeant major the second I figured this out. He's like, I gave him 2 weeks to help me out while I was at SLC. Didn't do anything. Then I went to the brigade sergeant major. Brigade sergeant major. I gave him 2 weeks. He even said, "Hey, everything should be fixed. I called him personally, got it all fixed, situated. If something happens, call me. Here's my cell phone number. Call me, and we'll get it fixed. August comes around, my number gets skipped again. I call him and I tell him, he's like, no, that's not what I told you. And I was like, so then I had a meeting with him, my battalion sergeant major, um, and I showed him. I printed out all the text messages between us, and like what I did, and then the guy who was sitting in for my sergeant major was E7, and like the I just went straight into explaining everything. No customs and curses. We're in a meeting,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I went straight. I just started going through the whole thing, and he's like, "Stop right there." The sergeant first guy's like, "Stop right there. Are you not going to say sergeant major? You're not going to do any customs and curses? What the fuck is wrong with you?" So I
Oh
was
my
like, "Okay,
god.
this meeting has just gone. It's going in the wrong direction. I'm done here. Like I shut down." So I'm already at that low point. I get to Sergeant Major Tavernier's office at Division at Fort Jackson. 25 minutes, he fixes the fucking situation. 25
Jesus.
fucking minutes. And 20 of those minutes was just explaining to him what was going on. And he goes, "Who
Right.
do I need to talk to?" And I go, "This civilian right here." He goes, "Spell his name." He types in the name on Microsoft Teams. He's like, "Oh, he's online right now." He face calls him. He goes, "Hey, I'm Command Sergeant Major Fort Jackson. I have this issue, blah, blah." He's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll fix it right now." He fixed it right then and there. So the next list comes out, I get promoted. So I'm already like four, 4 or 5 months behind my peers in E6, E7. Now the whole thing was like where you need to have X amount of time to keep the rank. And I'm at 12, 13 years in. Yeah, 13 years in. I'm like, do I want to do this? And then
Yeah, yeah.
I started doing college as a drill sergeant because when I was in DCO, I had a stellar fucking role model, drill sergeant Butler. She was a 42 series, but she was so squared away. Single mother. No, she was a yeah. I think she was a single mother, full time college student, a drill sergeant. She was doing it all. She was doing it all and putting us all to shame. So I started doing college when I saw like if she could do it, I could do it. So I started doing college then and there. So I already had my plan that I was going to get out of the army, and I was looking at what I was going to do afterwards. My buddy, who was a hiring manager for Locklead, he's like, "Hey man, I need you to get your freaking degree. Get your degree, and then we can start talking, and then I can try to hire you on." So I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna push my degree." Retention reaches out to me. It's like, "Hey, you need to reenlist." I was like, "I don't need to do a goddamn thing." Like, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna offer me?" He's like, "Well, we don't really have a budget to offer you anything." I was like, "You need to do your marketplace." I do my marketplace. My branch manager reaches out and he goes, "I can't offer you anything till you reenlist." I was like, "I'm not reenlisting." It's like he's like, "Well, you have a year left. You need it. Where are you gonna go afterwards?" I was like, "Nowhere, man. Like, I'm too far in. I have to sign in def next one." And he goes, "Which one? What duty station do you want?" And I was like, "Well, I'll get back to you." So I put in my OML or my
Your
list for the
your
marketplace.
marketplace, yeah, the list, yeah.
Yeah. So someone told me like, "Hey, put the one that you really want, fifth or sixth." So I put sixth RTB, fifth RTB. I was like, those are the two duty stations I would want to go. I want to go. I wanted to be a ranger instructor because that was what I was going to try to do before I came down to orders as a drill. And retention reaches out. He's like, "You can't go from trade hawk to trade hawk. Like, you're gonna ruin your career." And I said, "You guys ruined my career already. So this is the only thing I will re-enlist for. Either you give me one of my top 10, or I'm not re-enlisting." And they're
That's
like,
a good way to play it. I mean, not play it, but like you worked that system because now it's hard as fuck to negotiate anything with marketplace because really they trick you into like, well, you have to reenlist or you're going to get marketplace. Whereas you did, I want this or I'm just not going to reenlist. You did it really well. That's
and
smart.
that was, it only came down to like timing and luck. Like it really, it wasn't like a pre-planned thing or anything. It was just luck and timing. But my branch manager is like, "Well, it's not. It's really unheard of essentially for your MOS to go from TRADOC to TRADOC, to go from a broadening to another broadening assignment. I was like, well, that's what I want to do. Like, that's been the goal since like I got my tab in 2016. So I signed the paperwork. I reenlist, and I come down. I'm my current duty station. I've 6 RTV out in well, technically it's in Eglin, so but the Panhandle in Florida. So
Yeah.
right now, like, um,
It's a good spot from what I hear. That's a really good duty station.
it it is. It's not. It's great. I mean, I can't even like. It's a great like I I had some growing pains because like coming off the trail to a lax
Yeah.
environment like this is like where all their senior leaders and stuff. It was a really hard transition because I was just so my walls are always so high up because I got screwed over from my crash. I got screwed over from the awards. I got everything got downgraded. All Valis awards got taken off the table because uh, certain people didn't feel like I deserved that. Then going to I didn't deserve getting promoted to because no one helped me. And then it was like being a drill, not being like I didn't even leave the trail with a PCS award. You know, like you're
Damn.
I did a lot
Same, yeah.
for
It,
the unit that I was there. I ran a pre-ranger program where we said we had a 90% success rate of drill sergeants who would go to that program and graduate ranger school. 90% success rate. Granted, we only said six, so five of them graduated.
Either way, they got their fucking ranger
Yeah,
tab.
and we brought those that was under my tenure there. Um, I represented as the only drill sergeant at Ranger School that in 2022. Um, my MSM got downgraded because of the whole incident of me fighting to get my promotion because I made such a stink and I put my battalion under investigation for losing my paperwork, for losing my deferment paperwork, lying to me saying like it's here and here when I called up and when my leadership reached out, they made such a big stink about it, and I obviously I took it to social media. I took it to social media. Like I brought it because like it's a tool to use to get different insights and like to figure out what I'm missing because I don't know all the answers. Um, and that's how I started the paperwork as a drill sergeant. Oh yeah, that's another thing. I started the paperwork for my Purple Heart as a drill sergeant too, because 2019 the criteria changed for to include TBI, which I had tons on my medical record, tons of things that talked about what broke things I had broken, but a lot of things about my traumatic brain injuries that correlated to what happens to that incident. So I submitted my paperwork. If say happened, they never submitted my paperwork. I was being uh, gaslit for a year about it, and they never submitted it, and it just stayed on my brigade commander's desk and never left anything. So when I got to this unit last year, well, 6 months of getting into the unit, I resubmitted it, and right now it's at brigade right now
Yeah.
because leadership here just changes a lot. Like uh, our brigade commander changes like every other year. My BC is changing out every other year. The
Yeah, it's the Tradoc life. I mean, the Tradoc thing, it's always changing over
yeah
from your brigade down. It's always switching out.
yeah. So like I had a lot of help with my current S1, like to figure all this stuff out. And it was they've been a great help and keeping me in the loop of everything. But yeah, that's another thing. That was a my when I PCS from Jackson, the nail on the coffin that told me that I was doing the right thing was when I looked at my printed out MSN or my PCS award from Jackson. It was an MSN, and then you could see on IPSE the notes and the comments.
Yeah, yeah.
So I could see at what time these comments and notes were and when they signed it. So the comments were it went all the way down to the brigade commander. The brigade commander's like, I don't like this needs to be an RCOM because he wasn't a senior drill sergeant the whole time he was there. but he was only there as a senior drill sergeant for X amount of months. But and then the bullets all were great, and it said downgrade to ARCOM, but he signed it anyway, and it went all the way to the 1 star, and then it came back, and even on the a little part at the bottom where it's like the award type, it says on the little like the CC part where like the enclosure part, it says
Yeah.
MSN on it, but everything else says ARCOM. I got when they told me about it, they're like, oh, because I was already PCS here, my household goods are already here and stuff, and they told me all that stuff. Uh, I told them I don't want the award. I didn't even give them my address. They had to go through the other drill sergeants that I'm good friends with. They had to get my address from them so they can mail me the shit
Right.
because I
Because
made a
the
big
other drills are probably like, yeah, just get it to him. Yeah, here's his address or
yeah,
whatever.
because I made a big stink about it, and then it went pretty viral on TikTok as well about me buying my dark saber as my PCS award for myself. Um, and I made a video about it, and like, and then the comments were like, I experienced the same thing. It's just terrible, all that, and that's where I started getting into 3D printing. Like all the stuff that I
Oh,
make
nice.
now, it's because of COVID, and a lot of dudes were not getting a plaque or anything that signified from the units. So I learned how to 3D print, and I started making PCS awards for the dudes that I served with. Because yeah, I would like to get them something expensive and everything, but
It's expensive.
it's too expensive sometimes. So like
Yeah.
I learned how to do it myself, and then I gave everyone I ever worked with on the trail a PCS gift. I made sure. So I don't know, being pretty naive, I thought I would get one too as I left. Didn't get anything. I got was a downgraded MSN to an RCOM as a farewell gift on top of everything, which was the nail in the coffin. Where it's like to me, it was like I did everything I could, and the opportunity to screw me over one last time, they took it, and I'm okay with it. Um, Now I'm in the mindset. I am I'm halfway through, less than halfway through my tenure here. I can I could probably retire out of here and doing a job that I really enjoy doing. Like I enjoy teaching tomorrow's leaders all the experience that I learned from the 3 deployments that I did, the experience that I went through, uh, especially during that first and second deployment. And you ever watch the show Rescue Me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so in Dennis Leary, in the beginning, he's at the academy talking to the next class of graduates. He's talking about 9/11 and how he lost his cousin, blah blah. And
Yeah.
I relate with that series so much because I was there, I saw it. I had a lot of friends who lost family members who were from the firehouses down the block from us, uncles, fathers that got lost in 9/11 and everything. And at the end of that series, it comes full circle, and he's an instructor at the academy.
Yes.
And that's how
Yes.
I feel I could end my career the same way. A lot less racism, but the same way where it
Yes.
says an
But
instructor.
no, I get it's a great show, but I totally get the whole like passing down those experiences to make the army better, and you have a purpose, a true purpose of making the organization better.
And I
That's
have a
great.
golden opportunity to isolate that 1% of individuals who are the top of their organizations. Because to come to Ranger School, you need to be obviously physically fit, but you are a leader or soon to be leader. So you are going to lead individuals. And I have a saying when I tell everyone I go to class with, it's like, you will all eventually be leaders. You are going to be entrusted with the sons and daughters of America's mothers and fathers. The mothers and fathers of America are entrusting you, their kids, to lead. They deserve the best version of you. And the Ranger School offers that to them by giving you nothing and then cutting that nothing in half and telling you accomplish the mission. So you learn so much more about yourself in that aspect. And then I mean, I always like to relate to like David Goggins. You know how like David Goggins does talk about being a SEAL and stuff, but majority of the time it's talking about his experience at Ranger School and how that developed him as an individual. He's not he's not gonna learn all these crazy techniques and all that stuff, but the school taught him a lot about himself, and I try to
Yes.
preach that about the school as well. And the impact that I have being there, I'm not taking advantage of it. Like I'm very appreciative to be in the position I am currently.
Yeah, it's wild to hear that whole arch, basically of the ups and downs from starting out to getting to where you are. And I love the the mental fortitude you had to get through all that shit. Even when it was at its lowest point, you were able to get press on through and do that, man. Yeah, like I never been to range school. I know multiple people that have the tab, and it speaks volumes of them. Not everyone, but a lot of them. It shows in their work ethic, and I think you're going to create a good group of leaders.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Before
gonna be
we,
some turds that are gonna get through. Like that's just the nature of
well,
the beast.
yeah, but
Like
it's every school ever. That's
yeah,
every school in the army ever. Yeah.
and but it's also isolated like isolated incidents that happen. Like I like I'll read sometimes like because um I'll read sometimes about like some of the posts I make about Ranger School and stuff, and it's like, well, I had X, Y, and Z dudes that are just freaking turds, and all this leadership that I had were this tab, they were turds, blah blah, and then I just like to reply with sometimes like maybe some internal reflection would be required. Maybe you are the issue if you're just surrounded by turds and you're like you're always being singled
Yeah.
out, like you
If
might be the
everyone's
issue.
shit around you,
Yeah,
like,
you might be the issue sometimes, and that's okay.
yeah. Before we get out of here, I wanted to reflect a little bit. Era of tech.
Yes.
Like, when did you really start like pushing social media? How has that flown for you so far, and where do you kind of see it going?
So I started with social media like probably like 2016. I had a different handle. That was it was the handle was like Tech Nasty. It was during my CrossFit era of like I was just doing CrossFit workouts, and then the big thing was the nasty girls, like those nasty girl workouts and stuff. So I was just it was just a play on CrossFit. And then fast forward after like Ranger School and all that stuff, when I started sharing my story, it got social media got big. My social media platform got uh, it reached a lot more individuals who are like the point where it's like even the social media page for the army reached out to me several times. They're like, "Hey, can you make us a video?" Blah blah. In 2019, the unit I was in wanted. 2018, the unit I was in wanted to make a video about the what I came through, what I've gone through from the crash to competing at Best Ranger for Hawaii. Um, and at that time, I decided to change my handle because kind of it was inappropriate. Like Tech Nasty would be a pretty inappropriate name for like any professional organization to like push out.
Yeah.
So I went with my last name Teixeira, and I just rearranged the last three letters. I put it in the front, and then I just put the word "of" in between. Era of Tech, and I've been that since like 2000, since COVID, since right like 2019, 2020. Um, the opportunities I've had with social media, like me saying this out loud, it sounds like I'm boasting, but that video that the 25th ID made of my story of the time got submitted for a local Emmy, and it won an Emmy for mini documentary series uh,
Holy shit.
in 2019. I was deployed to Syria, and the officer who made it, the PAO officer, he like messages me on Instagram. He goes, "Hey man, remember that video we made? well, I got submitted for all these local awards and stuff, and it won an Emmy. I was like, that's awesome, dude. He's like, I was like, I mean, I wish I was stateside to go to meet you and like pick it up and stuff. But I'm stuck in the middle of Syria right now. Hopefully one day I'll be able to take a picture with it. Um, but then all like other shorts that I've done for the military, and then videos that I've made for my units and stuff that the army has picked up, and the opportunity it's given me, like I've gotten to meet a lot of dudes that I probably wouldn't have met, and I've had the opportunity to impact a lot of individuals directly or indirectly that I would never have known if it wasn't for social media. Um, I think social media is a great tool to be used. Um, and it's a great checks and balances, especially in the military, where it's like pages I look up to would be like Arnie with the WTF, like Arnie with the fuck moments, um,
Yeah.
pages that will show the good but also show the bad. Uh, I really relate with pages like that, and I think social media as a whole is a great tool that to use at every echelon of leadership. It's kind of sad to see like the sergeant major of the army just de- deactivated his account. Like I can understand from from the video that he posted and what he's talking about. Like it's not sergeant major of the army Weimer's point of view or his page. It's it's giving out the army's message. But I think having your own platform, being having a direct access to an individual like that, or a management team that have an access to that, um, would be vital for being successful in the military. I know Sergeant Major Grinstead had one. Sergeant Major Daly didn't have one, but like it's sad to see like the individuals' social media pages are going away because you get to learn about your leadership outside of just the 9 to 5 or whenever you just see them at work. Like a lot of people just automatically just tunnel everyone into like, oh, typical officer, stereotypical this, that, and the other. And
Yeah.
social media gives you an opportunity to showcase yourself in a holistic manner instead of just one level and like it's multifaceted. It's like one other page I really like is like the Big Tack. He's a tack officer at West Point, and
Hmm.
he shows off his West Point life, his personal life. I like pages like that, and I think those are beneficial
Yeah.
for the army as a whole.
Yeah, I that's honestly what I'm trying to my whole thing is not really military. I kind of do a hodgepodge of people, but I probably focus heavily on military being in it and stuff.
Yeah,
Um and I try to hear the stories more that are whether they're good, bad or ugly, um getting the message out there that people aren't just like these superstars or shit bags. Like there's a point behind everybody what they're doing and humanizing it
yeah.
because like the military has that thing of where it kind of takes away your human aspect and there's much more to it than that. So I'm glad to hear that. I see your stuff and it's awesome because it's like you kind of humanize some stuff too, but to hear that you appreciate those as well is really
Oh yeah,
awesome.
like my niche is like I like to to showcase a lot of issues with the military, like but at the same time making fun of myself. Like one of my big things is just like making stereotypical posts about making the military your whole personality, and then it always circle back to self reflection and myself. Like yeah, I fall into the same thing. You know, it happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, Tech, it was awesome having you on. I know you got to get to your run, and my kids are probably tearing apart my living room. So, it was awesome having you on and hearing this journey that you've been on. And I'm super pumped, and I love all your content. So, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing that with everyone.
Benjamin, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Just let me know when you're gonna release this so that I can share it on my platforms too.
Absolutely, man. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Tune back in another time. Thanks.